is always safer in the hands of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Seder.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
And I get the feeling you've been cheated.
It is Tuesday, March 1st, 2022. My name is Sam Seder. This is the five-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, Matt Duss, Foreign Policy Advisor to Senator Bernie Sanders, on the ongoing war in Ukraine. Meanwhile, Russia shells civilian areas in Kharkiv as a massive convoy, military vehicles, heads towards Kyiv. Sanctions on Russia mount. Meanwhile, talks between Ukraine and Russia go nowhere. Biden to deliver a State of the Union address tonight. We'll talk about that conflict and reorient the Build Back Better bill. California and Oregon and New York City dropped their school mask mandates as the CDC rejiggers its metrics to make COVID fade away. So easy, like magic. All Republicans and Joe Manchin, maybe that's redundant, stop an abortion rights law in the Senate. No word on civilian casualties in the weekend U.S. drone strike on Somalia. Republican leadership finally releases a statement that its members attending a white nationalist conference was wrong. Texas has its primary today. All eyes on Jennifer Cisneros. Jessica. And her sister Jennifer. No?
Fingers crossed.
And in other good news, the IPCC issues its bleakest warning yet about global warming, and nobody seems to be doing anything about it. All this and more on today's Majority Report. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks so much for joining us. It is Tuesday. Joining me, as always,
Emily Vigeland.
Emily Vigeland. I know. My back is hurting me, folks. And so I got, my normal problem with names, pronunciations, remembering them.
What little capacity you had to apply to names
completely
is now applied
diminished,
to the backs.
gone,
Right.
completely gone. So here it is. It's, I guess, day 5 of this Russian invasion of Ukraine, and reports through the night that Kharkiv, second biggest city in Ukraine, was shelled in civilian areas. In fact, our own Jack Crosby got, left Kharkiv just before the shelling began. He was on Chris Hayes' program last night, reporting from some distance that they had moved west. And my understanding, and we'll talk to Matt Duss a little bit about this, obviously a lot about this, but my understanding is that after Kharkiv, they will go south to another city and then make their way up to Kyiv, meeting, Belarusian forces. But it's
north,
unclear as to, where things stand in Kharkiv. Kharkiv was supposed to fall much quicker because at least people presume the assumption by Putin was that it would fall much quicker because it is closer, it is further to the east. It is more, I guess, ethnically, language-wise,
more Russian-speaking.
More Russian-speaking. I think it's the second. I think it's the largest Russian-speaking city in the country, and there was obviously a miscalculation by Putin's government. I've been trying to articulate this the past couple of days. Well, I guess just yesterday when I was on, but I was I mean, I've been trying to articulate this, and Duncan Black at Atrios at Eschaton wrote this up, and this is really important because I think very broad strokes, what has happened is people did not expect, ultimately, I think largely, there to be an invasion. Although, again, one never knows what other players are thinking. But largely, I don't think the Ukrainians thought there was. I mean, the American government certainly seemed to believe that there was going to be an invasion. Or at least they were posturing in that way. We don't know if they were posturing in that way as a way of trying to inhibit an invasion. But Putin clearly had some assumptions about how quickly and how easily this thing would take place, and they were wrong. The Russians have not dedicated nearly their full arsenal, even that they had amassed on the Ukrainian border, and they're starting to do that, and people are very worried about that. But I don't think anybody, including the Russians, or maybe even the Americans, for that matter, anticipated the blowback. There are 2 oligarchs, apparently, that are speaking out. There are people in the government that are speaking out. There are protests across Russia. There has been widespread in the West condemnation.
Now China appears to be turning.
There's like, I think there's... Well,
coyness there's a crack in it a bit. They're talking to the Ukrainian authorities.
Exactly. And at the very least, I think it's safe to say that there has been a more of a blowback than one could possibly anticipate, particularly if you remember what happened in 2014 with the annexation of Crimea. There just was nothing that amounted to this. And while I think that's a good thing, it does scare me insofar as that the ghouls who live amongst us in this country, in NATO, in other places, may seize upon this opportunity as a way of getting Putin out. Let me just read what Atrios said, and then we'll get into this, because this is about a clip that we have. Atrios says, de-escalation is a desirable goal, largely and separate from any concept of who is right and who is wrong. And the sad thing is that our politicians, puts an asterisk there, are largely just like us in that they're getting amped up on war fever and Twitter memes. We all want to crush the guy who deserves to be crushed, but getting through this with minimal loss of life should be the priority, not indulging in righteous rage. He writes, I am dumb and not in charge of anything. It is rare that I have any influence on the world at all, but the voices suggesting that anything other than maximum humiliation of Putin and regime change is unacceptable are growing louder. Hey, maybe they're right, but maybe they are catastrophically wrong.
And I'd add, just as an addendum, the calls for a no-fly zone over Ukraine, also disastrous.
This is all part of that same thing.
Yeah.
And he says, the asterisk, it seems the Biden people are pretty good, at least so far. Some Dems are not, and Republicans are switching from Putin is good to Putin is history's greatest monster is not actually helpful. Many UK politicians are far dumber and crueler than our own. Hard to believe, but very true. The point being that there is one thing to, posture to avoid a war, And then what happens is when they see that Putin is actually going to pay a major price for this.
He's a wounded animal in their eyes.
He is a wounded animal, but what the idea is at that point is, how do you wound him more at this point?
It's time for the kill shot, some of these ghouls are thinking.
But who will be the bullet? Here is Hillary Clinton on a Rachel Maddow show. Believe me, I wouldn't necessarily give a limb, but I'd give a lot to not have to discuss Hillary Clinton, regardless of what your feelings were as to the election, et cetera, et cetera. I was very upset that Michael Dukakis lost, but I did not, want to watch him 5 or 6 years later, opining on these type of things. Here is Hillary Clinton on Rachel Maddow's show, and I'll tell you what is really, really disturbing about this. Play the clip.
But remember, the Russians invaded Afghanistan back in 1980. And although no country went in, they certainly had a lot of countries supplying arms and advice and even some advisors to those who were recruited to fight.
One second. So just for those of you who are younger and don't know the history, when she says a lot of countries, really, basically, it's the United States. I mean, it may be our allies. They're doing it at our behest and et cetera, but we armed the Mujahideen. We actually paid for the madrasas in Pakistan to develop the Taliban.
Isn't there a movie starring Tom Hanks about this?
Yes, Charlie
Wilson's War. Brave Mujahideen fighters.
And also, this is how bin Laden grows.
Yes.
And so
her use of the passive voice is doing a lot there.
Exactly. Exactly. But her point being that it severely damaged the Soviet Union. So just keep that in mind. This is the mode of thought that is going on here, that sucking them into a quagmire may actually debilitate the existing government. This is what she is articulating here.
Russia. It didn't end well for the Russians. There were other unintended consequences, as we know, but the fact is that a very motivated
what were the unintended consequences? Can you imagine if
leave that all unsaid, shall we?
She's just not going to say the word 9 and then afterwards 11.
Right.
I mean,
there's a little bit of blowback, and of course the destruction of the country and the Taliban taking over. That was not the
occupation after that for 20 years.
But put that aside. And why does she want to put that aside? Because she's making a very specific point. If you draw them in, maybe this becomes a quagmire that ends up destroying the country. That's the point she's trying to make here.
Funded and armed insurgency basically drove the Russians out of Afghanistan. Obviously, the similarities are not ones that you should bank on, because the terrain, the development in urban areas, et cetera, is so different. But I think that is the model that people are now looking toward. And if there can be sufficient armaments that get in, and they should be able to get in along some of the borders between other nations and Ukraine, and keep the Ukrainian, both their military and their citizen volunteer soldiers supplied, that can continue to stymie Russia. Now, let's be clear that Russia has overwhelming military force. But of course, they did in Afghanistan as well. They also brought a lot of air power to Syria. It took years to finally defeat Syria. In terms of the insurgencies, the democratic forces, as well as others who battled the Russians, the Syrians, and the Iranians. So if you're fighting for your homeland, you're fighting for your family, you're fighting for your ideals, that's far more powerful than sending in these poor.
All right. couple of things. First on, yeah, you can't bank on this because there's a reason why they called Afghanistan the graveyard of empires.
Yeah.
They don't call that in Ukraine because of all those differences about Afghanistan. But do not misunderstand what she's saying here. There is an option that she could be saying here. She could be saying, the key is if there is enough resistance, maybe we can find an off-ramp for Putin so that we can save people's lives. And that is, she could be pushing that, but she's not. What she's saying is maybe if we arm Ukraine enough, it will create a quagmire. Now, granted,
there are unintended consequences.
There's unintended consequences, and the Russian military has overwhelming force. But maybe this could be a protracted, years-long thing where they will be stymied, and we will see a redo of what happened to the Soviet Union happen with Russia. And when she is talking about when Emma says, the kill shot is available, understand what she's saying here. The bullet are Ukrainians.
Yeah, and it's a country of 44 million people that she's kind of like toying around in her mind with as being a ground for a proxy battle, and which in her ideal world and in the people that think like her ends in Putin's power being greatly diminished.
And listen,
which is psychotic.
If I could press a button right now and Vladimir Putin was ejected into the stratosphere, I would do it without hesitation. But the bottom line is, and the reason why I read that paragraph from Atrios, is that we should be looking at de-escalation not because have any truck for Putin, but because you want to save human lives.
Not turn them into, sign them up for 10 years of guerrilla warfare.
Exactly.
And with the end, being as clean as she's anticipating that it will be, or she's claiming that it will be, even though she talked about how, it didn't work out so well in Afghanistan, but it might work this time, just a little bit different.
I mean, the bottom line is just the idea that you're going to you're encouraging Ukraine to turn into a years-long insurgency for the sake and using the example again,
right?
Using the example of Afghanistan, because aside from the unintended consequences that she sort of brushes away, the Taliban, 9/11, 20-year war, this and that, the only thing that really happened there, besides the death and destruction of many Afghans and the destruction of Afghanistan, was that it led to the demise of the Soviet Union. So what she's talking about is this is regime change without us really having to do that much. And by us, she means us sitting here in a studio, not the us of the people living in Kyiv or Kharkiv or anywhere in Ukraine.
And this is her way. I mean, let's be clear too, when she goes on Matt Duss' show to talk about this, when she says this is something people are considering, what do you think that her designs are here? It's to pressure the Biden administration publicly to get more involved.
Without a doubt.
So just that's why she's on Matt Duss' show.
Bad. That's my comment.
Yeah. Well said.
Yeah, bad. I think bad is accurate. We should say, just mention, we had mentioned that we were going to talk about this briefly. There's no update on the drone strike in Somalia. The U.S. military has said that there's probably no civilian casualties.
Oh, well, good.
So that's good.
I mean, that's something I think we need to pay attention to on the left right now, is The Intercept's done some good reporting on it, but it's sparse because the information coming out of not just Somalia, but broader Eastern Africa and our operations there, it's completely opaque and deliberately so. So like when we were having a larger question about, or a larger conversation about war and what that means, this is a reminder that we're still engaged throughout the globe in places like Somalia. And we have zero concept, at least it's not really reported on much in the Western press, of what those consequences are.
Couple of housekeeping notes. We have sold out of the live show in Brooklyn. We have decided that we will live stream it.
Big news.
Big news. How much are we going to live stream it for? Like 12, what did it say? $12.50? You can get more than 50% off that price via a coupon code that is in the AM Quickie. So if you sign up for the AM Quickie at amquickie.com, this is the cleverest marketing thing I have ever engaged in.
Who came up with it?
I actually did. I think I read about it somewhere, or somebody else was doing it, and I was like, oh wait, we could do that.
No, it's a good idea.
It is a good idea.
Virtual tickets. Yeah.
Well, no, not
and
the virtual tickets.
Part.
I didn't come up with that part. No, that was, I noticed that Francesca's doing. And I should say, the Bituation Room is happening a week from Thursday.
Yeah.
At the same place, at the Bell House in Brooklyn. I will be there.
And I'll be on vacation. I'm sad I'm missing it.
I will be there on stage. So check it out in Brooklyn. You can find tickets. We'll put a link to that. But in the meantime, if you want to stream the live show in Brooklyn on March 26th, you can do so by getting a steep discount by signing up for the AM Quickie at amquickie.com. We just want you to check it out because you will enjoy it. Corey and Jack are doing a bang-up job. Of course, Jack right now is in Ukraine reporting from the ground there and writing some amazing pieces in Rolling Stone magazine. So check that out. And also, this goes out to our Discord. Over 5,000 people in the Discord now.
Wow.
Yep.
5K.
That's right. 5K. 5,000. It's another way of saying that. Let's do just a little bit of preview for the State of the Union tonight. Obviously, Biden is going to talk about what's going in Ukraine. I mean, there's an extraordinary amount of pressure, I think, on the Biden administration from the ghouls who want to use the Ukrainian people as a mechanism for regime change in Russia. I have no problem with Putin not being the authoritarian, more or less dictator of Russia. But the idea that we should encourage a quagmire in Ukraine to do so is inhumane. And there's going to be a tremendous amount of pressure on the Biden administration. Let's play this clip of a Polish, I guess, reporter asking a question of Boris Johnson in Britain. And, you know, I don't think this, I think this Polish reporter is completely sincere. And I think it's a genuine expression of angst. Oh, wait, do we have Matt?
I was about to say,
okay,
we
sorry.
should wait
yes,
to
I didn't
do
realize.
this.
Okay.
We'll take a quick break.
Oh, we need to take a quick break. And when we come back, we'll be talking to Matt Duss. All right, we are back. Sam Seder on the Majority Report here with Emma Vigeland, and joining us, Matt Duss, Foreign Policy Advisor to Senator Bernie Sanders. Matt, good to see you. It's been a long time since you've been on the show. Thanks for being with us.
Glad to be here, Sam. Thank you.
So I was just saying that we played a clip of Hillary Clinton on Rachel Maddow's show talking about all the unintended. There were some unintended consequences of the money that we poured into Afghanistan to fight the Russians in, I should say at that time, the Soviet Union in Afghanistan. She didn't really outline the unintended consequences, but the big prize was what it did to the then Soviet Union. And many people feel that Afghanistan was a big part of the fall of the Soviet Union in terms of draining it of resources, and suggested that there was an analog, even though the terrain's not the same, to the Russians, if there's enough weapons poured into Ukraine, to the Russians' experience in Ukraine. And I want to play this clip for you of a Polish reporter speaking to Boris Johnson, pleading for a no-fly zone, because I think in many respects, these are two forces that are pushing for greater conflict. Here's this clip.
A woman from my team is now in Bila Tserkva, and she is there with 2 kids, and Russian military is over there, and she's so much afraid that she will be shot. Kharkiv, the city where I was studying, was bombarded today, fully, the downtown square. So you're talking about the stoicism of Ukrainian people, but Ukrainian women and Ukrainian children are in deep fear because of bombs and missiles which are going from the sky. And Ukrainian people are desperately asking for the West to protect our sky. We are asking for the no-fly zone. We are saying in response that it will trigger World War III. But what is the alternative, Mr. Prime Minister? To observe how our children are, instead of planes, are protecting NATO from the missiles and bombs? What's the alternative for the no-fly zone? We have planes here, we have air defense system in Poland, in Romania. NATO has this air defense. At least this air defense could shield the Western Ukraine so that these children with women could come to the border. It's impossible now to cross the border. There are 30 kilometers of lines. Imagine crossing the border with a baby or with 2 children. I'm so glad that Samantha Power is coming here to the border from the Polish side. Let her come to the border from Ukrainian side and see that. Britain guaranteed our security under Budapest Memorandum. So you're coming to Poland. You're not coming to Kiev, Prime Minister. You're not coming to Lviv because you're afraid. Because NATO is not willing to defend. Because NATO is afraid of the World War III, but it is already started. And these are Ukrainian children who are there taking the hit. You're talking about more sanctions, Prime Minister, but Roman Abramovich is not sanctioned. He's in London. His children are not in the bombardments. His children are there in London. Putin's children are in Netherlands, in Germany, in mansions. Where are all these mansions seized? I don't see that. I see that my family members, that my team members are saying that we are crying. We don't know where to run. Well, this is what is happening, Prime Minister.
Well, thank you.
So, I mean, there's, nothing that I think you could take issue with in terms of what that woman was saying, outside of the fact that, like, she's presenting this dichotomy of, what are the other options besides World War III? I mean, World War III is a pretty steep, decision to make.
And we should say too, just really briefly, sorry, Matt, like that a no-fly zone isn't just an imaginary invisible shield over Ukraine. That means shooting down Russian airplanes. And like that is a declaration of war. So I feel like there's very little understanding of that, because when we've implemented no-fly zones, it's usually been over smaller countries where the implications haven't been as grave as this.
Right, and I think that's a great point. And I think I am encouraged, and I don't often say that I am encouraged about the way that these kind of foreign policy debates go, especially in situations like this. But I have been encouraged at the number of people who I have seen pointing out what you just did, Emma. Right, we are not talking about. We do not have the ability to just create an invisible energy shield around the airspace of Ukraine. Unfortunately, when people kind of throw out these terms like no-fly zones. I think they've heard about them. They've heard about how they've actually done good in the past, so they think it sounds smart for them to say it. But what it requires, what we are talking about, is U.S. and NATO planes and U.S. and NATO artillery and anti-aircraft weapons shooting down Russian planes, and that is not a step toward war. That is a war with Russia, another nuclear-armed state, and that is an extremely serious, a thing that we need to understand. And again, that's not to diminish at all what that Polish journalist was saying. I mean, I feel it, and I felt it deeply just now, and we all should. But at the same time, we also have to ask what are going to be the consequences of these kinds of steps that we take, and what are other things that we can do to protect refugees, to protect civilians, and can we do those?
And we should point out that this is that decision to enter into World War III does not necessarily protect those people anymore. It more than likely,
yes, they will die as well. That is right, and I think that point is like so much of the kind of the do something tendency is very understandable, and especially in situations like this. But we need to include in the bucket of do something. There are things that are not just military escalation. Certainly military. The military tool is a one that has its place. But I think we need to look at other options here, given some of the very clear consequences of a military escalation.
All right, so let's go backwards. We sort of skipped ahead, I think, in the context of this conversation, but we were there when we entered it. Give us a sense of how it is that we got to where we are today. I know that's it's a heavy lift, but give us in broad strokes, your understanding of how we got to this point, and how surprising it is that we are at this point.
Yeah, I mean, it's always a challenge, and of how far back do you go to lay down the context here. But I'll try to kind of do as best I can. So it's clear that Putin particularly, but also not just Putin. I think the kind of Russian government, the Russian political echelon have been concerned for a long time of Ukraine's growing relationship with the West, with Europe, with the United States in particular. This has expressed itself in various ways. I think we can go back to 2014, which was an important moment, the Maidan protests, which arose when kind of the pro-Russia president of Ukraine at the time kind of canceled a Ukraine-Europe trade agreement in favor of a Ukraine-Russia trade agreement. There were mass protests. That president was ousted and replaced with a different one, and Russia clearly saw this as a U.S. orchestrated coup. I think others have made that claim. I don't think it's correct to call it a U.S. orchestrated coup. At the same time, the United States made no secret whatsoever of how they wanted things to turn out at that time. But clearly Putin, he saw that as an escalation and a massive interference on the part of the West and the U.S. in terms of Ukraine's politics. We then saw a little bit later the kind of the Russian, what was a Russian invasion in 2014, although it was a much more subtle and deniable invasion than the one we are seeing right now. This is, the use of military contractors and militias, essentially, that were closely affiliated. And I think there's evidence that they were, essentially under the command of the Russian government at the time. But they were not wearing Russian military uniforms, so there was a level of deniability of what was actually going on. So taking over these two oblasts, as they are called, in the Donbass region of eastern Ukraine, and that was essentially frozen since 2014, but we saw just a week ago, and in the weeks and months leading up to a week ago, starting about a year ago, Russian forces starting to mass at the borders of Ukraine, bringing some, I think it's probably over 170,000 troops ultimately, and then a week ago, Putin kind of laying out this flimsy legal and historical pretext for what he was about to do was just to say that we are recognizing the independence of these two regions, and according to our laws, we have the right and the responsibility of protecting, Russian-speaking citizens in these regions. So I'm using my military to go in there. But at the same time, he also, before the invasion happened, gave an hour-long speech laying out this very expansive and frankly bizarre vision of what he was doing, which is to say, Ukraine is actually not a real country. It's just a part of Russia. Ukrainians aren't a separate nationality. He's claiming to denazify Ukraine. He's also claiming to decommunize Ukraine. And for those, interestingly, people have pointed out that his quote from the past was just where he called, the collapse of the Soviet Union the greatest geopolitical calamity of the 20th century. What he was laying out was, something that's reaching back even farther than the Soviet Union, was a much kind of imperial conception of the new Russian empire as he saw it. So I think people have raised the issue of NATO expansion and the role that played to bringing us here, and I think that is valid. It is clear that NATO played a part here in kind of the set of grievances that a lot of Russians have, not just Putin, and U.S. officials have acknowledged these concerns going back 30 years. But at the same time, that does not tell us the whole story. Like I said, NATO was one of a number of grievances that have led to this. But it's clear that Putin's goals and his vision and his set of grievances are much, much broader than just that.
And to that point, in just a moment, I want to read something and just see what your knowledge is of this, because there was supposedly the RIA Novosti, the Russian, one of the Russian news agencies, had put out an essay accidentally, and it's now available only on the web archive. I want to read that in a moment to you, but first, just in terms of the interim period between 2014 and the past couple of weeks, what was the relationship between the Ukrainian government and those two regions in the Donbass? I'm sure I'm not pronouncing it quite
Donetsk and Luhansk.
Right, and how I've read, and it's so difficult at this point to get an assessment of attempts to cut off water supplies to those regions, the hostilities that have gone back and forth. People talk about the 14,000 people that have died in the conflict between them. What was the timing, and explain that dynamic?
Well, I think, just to put it simply, I think, as you go east in Ukraine, you see the Russian language spoken more. You see kind of what some would call ethnic Russians, or at least Russian culture, assert itself more as you get west toward Kiev, and the western Ukraine is a much more Ukrainian, kind of nationalist Ukrainian culture. But this is not unique in the world. I think you have a lot of countries with different cultures and different languages spoken. But yes, as you move east, it does become more Russian. I think as you get east into these regions, also, you do have some people who would probably prefer to be part of Russia, or at least orient Ukraine more toward Russia than toward Europe. And I think people have raised certain steps the Ukrainian government has taken that were viewed as hostile to some of these peoples in eastern Ukraine. But, the answer to these problems is not to invade Ukraine and take these regions. It is to try and promote a more pluralistic democracy for all its people.
We have Quebec in Canada.
Right.
They speak actually a different language, than the rest of Canada. But what has been, to the extent that there's been hostilities in those areas? And I'm not talking about this as a justification for an invasion where you're bombing civilians, but just so that people have an awareness of that dynamic. What steps did the Ukrainian government, if any, did they, in terms of having a chilly or a hostile relationship with those two areas?
Well, I think, there were some steps like promoting, Ukrainian language and Ukrainian culture that a lot of Ukrainians did support, but that, again, people in the East saw as hostile and exclusionary. Again, this is not unique to Ukraine, but I would also say that part of this was driven quite intentionally by Putin himself, not only by the actions that he was taken, but by clearly, efforts to politically manipulate, the people of Eastern Ukraine and promote these grievances. So I think that is very much worth keeping in mind.
And in terms of Kharkiv, given its relative proximity to the eastern separatist regions,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, perhaps I'm jumping a bit ahead here, but like, what were the underlying assumptions that Putin and the Russians had now that they're assaulting Kharkiv to this degree?
Yeah.
Like, did they overplay their hand and think, okay, because there's more Russian speaking people here, they're a little bit more culturally Russian, that they'll greet us as liberators? Was that a bit of the belief there?
Yeah, I think that is an appropriate comparison, because it does seem that, a number, and again, I'm not a military expert, but I think, I've seen a number of military experts commenting on the complete, just the incompetence of this invasion from the get-go in terms of supply lines, in terms of strategy and tactics. But also in terms of Putin and people who know and watch him very closely. I mean, he, over the course of the last 2 years of COVID, has just apparently become much, much more isolated. Hears from a much, much smaller number of people. And certainly he would not be, as your reference indicates, he would not be the first president to launch an extremely stupid war of choice that did not go very well. But yeah, I think that what we're seeing over the past, it's almost a week starting tomorrow, is this has gone much, much more slowly and grindingly than Putin appears to have thought, and not only in terms of the advances, but in terms of the troops themselves, who I think there's evidence we're seeing that they were not aware of what they were actually being asked to do in the first place. Why are we being sent to Ukraine as they're being confronted? I saw a video a couple of days ago of a Russian troop in a village in eastern Ukraine, where he's just sitting on a doorstep, with his head in his hands, surrounded by Ukrainian villagers who are just berating him and asking him, "Why have you come to make war on our country? What are you doing?" So again, you don't want to overstate that, but I think those images, and some of the news we're seeing about that indicates that, Putin's thought this was going to be a much, much more different operation. They could do this fairly quickly and easily without the Russian people ever experiencing any of the news or the blowback or the costs of this invasion. And that very much appears not to be going his way.
I mean, this is the thing that I find really stunning about this. I mean, is that both the failure in sort of awareness as to how they would be greeted by Ukrainians, a misunderstanding of how this attack would be greeted by the rest of the world, which I guess, follows naturally. I mean, if you think you're going to just walk in and Kharkiv is going to shower you with candy and flowers, then of course, maybe you don't see, a woman, a reporter crying to Boris Johnson. Maybe you don't see, Disney saying we're not going to do, not that that's terribly relevant, but it's indicative of like sort of broad pressure. But it also seems like there was no preparation whatsoever amongst the Russian people. We remember the buildup to the Iraq War. There was a complete misunderstanding of how we would be received in Iraq.
Right.
The Bush administration was quite adept at building support within this country. It took about a year and a half of them just sort of like, really building. Tell
me about, what do you think about my great idea of launching this ridiculous war? And they're all basically just like, we think it's pretty good, while they are clearly terrified and nervous.
I played a clip of somebody yesterday who stood up. I think it was a longtime sort of intelligence who said, maybe we should negotiate and give him one more chance. He said, "You're not really saying that, are you?" No, I'm not saying that.
No, he evinced the tiniest bit of caution, and Putin made sure to just humiliate him. In front of everyone else, just to make sure that everyone knew what the correct answer was.
We could hear his heart breaking through the screen and beads of sweat. pooling.
Exactly. Like you could almost see him sort of like, honey, take the kids, get into the and
yeah. But all that to say, I mean, that was the extent of the consensus building that appears to have gone on. Yeah.
I want to get to that sort of, that sort of like, I guess the denouement on that question, which is, is he a lunatic? But I want to read this from the RIA Novosti. This is the Russian news agency. It purports to have been printed. People have it from the web archive because they pulled it down after they printed it. They published it accidentally.
Yeah.
Do you have any? Before I just read a little portion of it, do you have any sense of the validity of this, or is it? I mean, is it one of those things like we don't know?
I mean, I don't, but I like you. I saw a lot of people referencing it. So
all right, let me just read a little bit of it. I mean, again, in these contexts, very hard to, this would be a very nuanced piece of disinformation that would be put out, but certainly it is, so this is a piece, The Offensive of Russia in the New World, and it talks about Russia is restoring its unity, the tragedy of 1991, which echoes what Putin said publicly.
Yes, right.
This terrible catastrophe in our history, its unnatural dislocation has been overcome. Yes, at great cost. Yes, through the tragic events of a virtual civil war, because now brothers separated by belonging to Russian and Ukrainian armies are still shooting at each other, but there will be no more Ukraine as anti-Russia. And it goes on to say, Vladimir Putin has assumed, without a drop of exaggeration, a historic responsibility by deciding not to leave the solution of the Ukrainian question to future generations. After all, the need to solve it would always remain the problem for Russia for two key reasons.
Right.
And the first was they mentioned national security and the implication of the expansion of NATO, but it would also be the complex of a divided people, the complex of national humiliation when the Russian House first lost its part of its foundation, Kiev, as they call it, and then forced to come to terms with the existence of two states, not one, but two peoples. Talking about the reunification of the Russian Empire, not the Soviet Union, but the Russian Empire. And he even threatened, I guess, Finland, if Finland became a member of NATO, which, of course, was part of that original Russian Empire. What is the sense of what happens? What is the sense of Vladimir Putin in terms of like being a rational actor? Like, I've grown up with Gaddafi is a madman. Saddam Hussein's a madman. Arafat's a madman. Just a series of madmen who are complete lunatics, not rational, and therefore we can't. So I'm a little bit sensitive to the idea of labeling foreign leaders who are not doing what we want them to do as madmen. But it seems like Putin isn't. I mean, how rational of a player he is he? We can't know for sure, but I want to get your sense of what the assessment is amongst folks like yourself. And then, if we deem him to be not terribly rational, how do people approach that?
That's right. I mean, those are good questions. I mean, I think there's, what do we mean by rational? I mean, or irrational? I mean, is he peeing in jars? I don't think so. I mean, you can be rational, but have absolutely batshit goals. And it seems to me that's sort of where we are here. That editorial, compared to the speech we saw from Putin and also going back a year ago to this article, this historical article he published, laying out some of that previously, it's pretty consistent. And I think especially what that article you just read said about Putin is the one who solved the Ukraine problem for future generations. I think I've heard this from others who watch Putin much more closely. It's like, well, let's think where he is. He's about 70 years old. He's got maybe 10 more years of rule. It does make some sense that this is the time when he would want to dispose of, as he might see it, the Ukraine question, and just deal with it and establish his legacy as the new Peter the Great or whomever. So again, from Putin's possible perspective, trying to get into his head. I know others who are much more expert on this person have suggested this. But yeah, going to what you said, I mean, yes, I think this is a crazy set of goals, but he can be going about it rationally, if incompetently. He's making the wrong calculations, as it clearly he is too. But then the question is, okay, what's his end game? What will it take to get him to climb down? What are the possible off-ramps here from escalation? And that, I think, is part of what is concerning here, is that he does not seem to have left himself any.
Well, Sam just mentioned Finland, and I think that that's a good way to start talking about, like, maybe what are some of his goals, because there's some parallels in that. I believe it was the Winter War, right, where the Soviet Union, they invaded Finland. It didn't go so well. Finns were wearing white camouflage uniforms. Soviets stuck out in red in the winter. It was on their home turf. The initial invasion was
never do that.
Right, I know. I mean, well, but this is in Ukraine, which is a much larger country. They're seeing some of this, some of the difficulties of fighting on someone's home turf. But in the end, Russia was, I mean, the USSR was just too powerful at that point, and they did get some of Finland's territory, and they were able to, or I think it was Stalin, was able to annex some portions. So is that the blueprint more that you would say you think Putin's probably going for?
No, I mean, I think that's a really good point, because even though this, I mean, we are still not even a week into this invasion, or this, further invasion of Ukraine. Russia, at last I've heard, has still committed only 2/3 of its force. Maybe it's more by now. But at last count, I think some have estimated they had close to 200,000 troops in play, only 2/3 of those committed. I have not really seen anyone who thinks that they will not eventually succeed. And the question is, well, what then? We don't know how long it will take. It will be cruel and bloody and horrible. And of course, the Ukrainians will fight courageously. But given, even if the Russian military is behaving poorly, I think that the numbers they have, the equipment they have, could eventually do the job. The question is, again, what then? I mean,
well, that's my point. What constitutes succeed?
Right.
I mean, because they could go in and what I've read was that the initial and again, who knows, but this is what seems to be broadly the consensus, that Putin thought he would come in, Kharkiv would fall in an afternoon, they would march on Kiev. They would kill Zelensky and his family, or just because they don't want a leader in exile. They would put in a more sympathetic regime, towards Russia. But I mean, even if they were able to do that at this stage, it appears to me that they're dealing with an ongoing insurgency. And my understanding is, when the Soviet Union invaded Czechoslovakia in 1968, they had more than 200,000 troops. Yeah. Czechoslovakia is a smaller country. And the Soviet Union was, only 20 years out from fighting World War II. I mean, this was not a military force where, its soldiers were like, what am I doing here? They seemed to know what they were doing there. Yeah. It's unclear to me that even if they are able to get to that point where they initially thought they could, that they have achieved anything that is going to be durable in any way. So then the question really becomes what is there any sense that if like I think what Emma was suggesting, if they are, that Putin could say, all right, well, really what our real agenda has been is to annex those places in the Donbass. And also to have, and that's what we really want, or we want to create, we want Odessa, I mean, is there a scenario where he can get less than Ukraine? And like you say, is that an off-ramp?
Yeah, at this point, I really don't think so, both because of what he's done, but also what he's said. Taking an eastern chunk of Ukraine does not solve his problem. It leaves him with a much more radicalized and much more pro-Europe and pro-NATO Ukraine. We even just saw earlier, a few hours ago, with Zelensky applying for fast-tracked membership to the European Union and receiving it. I mean, this is now in play. Putin all along has essentially created the outcome that he claims to fear.
That's what's so amazing about this. Is that, I mean, this seems to be so predictable. You've got people who are, skeptical about NATO going like, well, maybe there is a reason for NATO.
But maybe he's arrogant enough and he feels like the Russian forces are large enough. He doesn't see the U.S. mobilizing to sustain an occupation in Ukraine and then both annex those two separatist regions and ensure, like in the case of Finland, a neutral state in Ukraine, which seems like a huge ask. And, I mean, if he wants to go even further, have a pro-Putin leader as the head of state as opposed to someone like Zelensky. But there's an arrogance there that I think is inherent in a lot of imperialists, that once you wreak havoc in a region, that actually things are going to work out for you in the end. Like as Sam was saying, it's just going to, or as I'm sorry, maybe you were saying this, Ukraine's just going to be even more gung-ho and pro-NATO after this, especially if you annex those separatist regions.
Right. And I think part of Putin's thinking might just be, well, look at the cruelty we've witnessed, over the past decades, including the cruelty that Russia engaged in support of the Assad regime in Syria. And he's saying, well, we'll do this and the world will condemn us and they'll sanction us. And then they will just get used to it. They have to deal with us because of our energy, because we have nuclear weapons, because we're a great power. So again, I can see that kind of being part of his thinking, and also would add to this, I don't think you can overstate the fact that he has very few around him who are willing to kind of take him by the elbow and say, Vova, this is you're screwing up.
So what, from the perspective of people who in this country, and we touched on this, I guess it starts with your sort of basic assumption of what you want. Of what the best case scenario is to come out of this. For some people, I think it is the best case scenario is for Putin to be irreparably weakened. For others, and I would count myself in this, is like I want the least amount of people to die and suffer through a war. But the Ukrainian people, at least to the extent that we hear them, through the channels that we hear them, want more weapons. So what do you think our response should be?
I mean, I think our response right here, I think what the Biden administration has been doing to build unity with Europe and push Europe and encourage Europe to actually respond as Europe has been actually very impressive. And I'll also say this, I mean, Senator Sanders, my boss, was one of those who said, let's make every effort to avert this diplomatically. Let's be willing to address legitimate security concerns that Russia might have. And I think that was the right argument. And I actually think the Biden administration tried to do that. And I think that is worth acknowledging. I think what we saw from European allies like Macron in France, like Scholz in Germany, in their efforts to sit and talk with Putin and put all of these issues on the table was genuine and was very important, but it's Putin who actually made this choice. So for now, I think maintaining that unity, I think what we saw over the past few days, I mean, it's notable how quickly we went from let's sanction Putin and his oligarchs to these massive sanctions, cutting Russia off from SWIFT system, sanctioning the Russian central bank. I mean, these are very serious sanctions that have just cratered the ruble yesterday, that could cause massive real impacts on the Russian economy and the Russian people. So while I think the unity and the speed with which we move has been notable, I think we have to kind of pause for a moment and make sure that we are tying means to ends with regard to the sanctions that we are piling on. I would point folks to a piece by Dan Dresner in the Washington Post just today that is raising some of these really important questions that I think we have to be asking now, because I think there is a tendency in situations like this to just be like, well, let's just pile on sanctions, and when it doesn't produce the behavior change that we want, we're just going to pile on more sanctions. these are serious financial and economic weapons that have serious impacts on human beings. And again, we need to find ways to put pressure on Putin, no question. But let's think through what's a situation in which we would actually talk about unwinding these sanctions. And the other piece I would mention is caring for refugees. That is something that the United States has an enormous capacity to do good. That the European partners, and particularly Ukraine's neighbors, have an enormous capacity, and I think are already taking important steps to care for refugees coming through, trying to keep corridors open, et cetera. And, I think these steps are not as satisfying as some would like to see. There is a tendency to imagine that, well, if we would just use military power, we can solve these problems and that will kind of save the day. But I think I would caution against that tendency, as painful as some of these things that we are seeing are and will continue to be. I think just trying to promote a more serious conversation about how we can actually do good. And as you said, Sam, the ultimate goal is here. Let's have fewer dead people rather than more.
And just to be clear on that, on the sanctioning of Russia, that the immiserating the Russian people as a leverage point is equally inhumane as the immiseration of Ukrainian people. I mean, the idea is to mitigate suffering.
Right. And I think there's an argument for, kind of sanctions and boycotts, et cetera, when you're talking about, a population that actually has a say in how it's governed. That is not the case in Russia. Right.
I think that is a really important distinction that we should keep in mind. And lastly, there's I hope, but I fear there's going to be a tremendous that there's not, but I fear there's going to be a tremendous amount of tragedy that we're going to be watching in the coming days and weeks, and hopefully not longer than that, but possibly. But there also seems to be at least a somewhat of a reckoning of, we've done a good job, from Europe and in the context of the United States, we've done a good job of paying attention to the suffering and of the Ukrainian people and the acceptance of refugees. What are the chances that we're able to apply that lesson to people who are not white?
Right. I don't know the answer to that, but I think we got to keep raising it because it's essential. I think some of the comments we've been seeing from reporters and analysts to that point, like, well, this is different. They're white. This is, quote unquote, a civilized country, which, if Baghdad and Aleppo are not civilized, I mean, these are foundational to the civilizations of the world. So yeah, I think
cradle of civilization.
Absolutely. I mean, yes. And I think continuing to press that. I mean, when we talk about accepting refugees, as Senator Sanders has called, not only supporting Europeans in accepting, but committing to accept them here, that should apply to Ukrainians and everyone else, including from the Middle East, including from Afghanistan, including from the Western Hemisphere. This is part of who we are as the United States. That's what he believes. That's what I believe. But just stepping back, what you said about Europe, I do think it's important for listeners to understand, like, what we have seen over the past days from Europe is amazing, and we're still this is definitely a new era in terms of Europe. What we saw just particularly from Germany, like that speech from Scholz, I think it was Saturday. Where Germany broke from decades of, I won't call it pacifism. Some people call it pacifism, but a foreign policy that would not engage in war, would not provide weapons, would look for all kinds of other tools to advance security. Now going to be doubling its defense budget, meeting its NATO going over the 2% NATO requirement. I think this can't really be overstated what a significant shift this is on the part of Europe stepping up here. It's just a sign of this really is a shift in U.S.-Europe relationships and the way Europe looks to its own regional security.
Matt Duss, foreign policy advisor to Senator Bernie Sanders of Vermont. Thanks so much for your time today. I really appreciate it.
Great to see you, Sam. Great to see you, Emma.
All right, folks. Just want to one note. Listener Ronald Reagan has tweeted out. I think I retweeted it the other night. Yakima Abogado. We will put that on the blog. If you are, I know we have listeners in Germany. There's a family that is in Ukraine. The family members speak German. They are trying to get to Germany. If you have any opportunities for them there, you can reach out to Yakima Abogado and let them know. We'll put a link to that on the blog. Also, just a reminder, it is your support that keeps this show going. You can become a member at jointhemajorityreport.com. When you do, you not only get the free show free of commercials, you get the fun half every day that we do it, which is just about every day. Mm-hmm. Don't forget, you can also become a member of the Discord. Now, over 5,000 of you are on the Discord, discussing things, organizing, sometimes providing mutual aid. It's a great community. Check it out. Doesn't cost you anything. MajorityDiscord.com. Just sign up. You can listen to this show on its app. You can IM the show via the app at MajorityApp.com. Also free. Again, if you want to stream our show from Brooklyn on March 26th, you can do so by going to MajorityLive and clicking through, and you can get tickets there. But if you go and sign up for the AM Quickie, tomorrow's AM Quickie, you will see a coupon code that will save you over 50%. Wow. It's crazy. Matt, what's happening in the Matt Leckian media universe?
Yeah, on Sunday, we released for patrons a talk with historian Mark Kruger about the St. Louis Commune of 1877, when workers used the general strike and the rail strike of 1877 to take over the city of St. Louis and how that happened. It's a very, very interesting story about how the specter of communism wasn't just haunting Europe in the 19th century, but also the heartland of America. Patreon.com/leftreckoning.
I have yet to listen to that episode, but I'm going to. But I am like, I think most people are aware that I am of the mind that those sort of like, small changes bring about bigger changes. And I don't think it's a coincidence that it's in the context of what the radical Republicans were doing. Once people start getting the ideas.
Many of them were like radical union members. And, they were just asking for things like 8-hour workday and no child labor and stuff like that. It wasn't like they were a lot of the German immigrants were influenced by Marx, but the radicalism wasn't really evident in the demands of the way they give us what we want as far as wages and stuff.
But my sense is that when people get a small taste of something, it raises their expectations and their demands. And, so when you see, something like the Build Back Better bill, I am convinced that would have, continued momentum for people. You give people universal pre-K and they start talking about daycare, and they start talking about daycare, and they start talking about 4-day work weeks, and on and on and on. I think that's where it happens.
It's like cultivating a sort of secure democratic populace.
Yes. All right, folks. See you 646-257-3920. I just dunking on Majority Report. Just bought one ticket for the streaming show for my husband and me. That's right, one ticket, because we're watching it together. Thanks for the free ticket, suckers.
Actually, I'm on the intellectual property police, so I'll be paying you a visit later.
That's right.
You'll be getting
just talking about that.
Letter from the government.
That's right. See you in the fun half. 646-257-3920.
You are in for it.
All right, folks. 646-257-3920. See you in the fun half.
Oh, no.
Are you ready?
Who sent us this?
Anarchy. Alpha males are back. Boy is back.
And the alpha males are back.
Just as delicious as you could imagine.
The alpha males are back. Boy, back. And the alpha males are back.
Just want to degrade the white man.
Alpha males are back.
I take all of it in my throat.
Alpha males are back.
Snowflake says what?
The alpha males are back.
You are a madman.
And the alpha males are back.
Oh no, Sam Seder! What a fucking nightmare!
Bring back DJ.
Yeah, or a couple of them. Just put them in rotation.
DJ Denner.
Well, the problem with those is they're like 45 seconds long, so I don't know if they're enough of a break.
That's fucking nonsense. You see white people doing drugs, they look worse than normal white people, and all white people look disgusting.
And the alpha males,
psych, fuck them.
Oh. Snowflake says what? Snowflake says what?
A hell of a lot of bank. Okay, I'm making stupid money. Hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank.
All lives matter. Have you tried doing an impression on a college campus?
I think that there's no reason why reasonable people across the divide can't all agree with this. Psych.
And the alpha males are back. And the Africans are black African. And the alpha males are black. And the Africans are back.
When you see Donald Trump out there, doesn't a little part of you think that America deserves to be taken over by jihadists? Keeping it 100. Can't knock the hustle. Come on, fuck them. Things I do for the bigger game plan. By the way, it's my birthday. Happy birthday to me, Jew boy.
I have a thought experiment for you.
And the alpha males are back. Africans are black. Alpha males are black. Africans are back.
Come on. Come on. Someone needs to pay the price for blasphemy around here.
I am a total pussy.
We are back, ladies and gentlemen. It is the fun half of the Majority Report. The phones are now operating.
The phone machine is on.
That's right. The phones are now operating. Let's go right to those phones. Right out the gate. Calling from a 509 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Oh, is this me?
Yes, it is.
Oh, hi. This is Ronald Reagan.
You know, I had a feeling it was you. I saw that 509 jump in very quickly.
Very quick. You got to be quick.
You got to be quick.
First things first, did you wear the T-shirt to Disneyland or not? Disney World?
Well, I did technically wear it to Disney World. I mean, to Disney World. I did not wear it specifically to the, I forgot. And so I put it on after I got back and then took it off. And both my kids will attest to the fact that I did wear it and it was down there with me.
Do we have a picture?
No, I did not take a picture.
Well, it's a long way of saying no.
No, well, it's actually no. It's a long way of saying yes. It's just highly qualified.
All right. Well, I guess as a secondary matter, you already mentioned this, but we're trying to find someone who can maybe take a family of 3 in Germany, preferably. They're still trying to get out of. They're still trying to get out of Kyiv, so that's kind of the first obstacle, obviously. But if they can get out, we'd like to have some place that we could help them get settled. So people can send me a message on on Twitter, and that would be great. So yeah, and I just wanted to say I appreciate your coverage of this. It's all like really complicated, and I've been like kind of emotional about it on Twitter, and I'm sorry if I've hurt anyone's feelings or if I've been rude. I know that's been going on. My wife still has family in Kyiv, and so like the other day we turned on CNN. We never watched the news really, and like right as we turned it on, the guy says, "Oh, there's a report of a rocket hitting an apartment building here in Kyiv." And you know, hopefully we have empathy like anytime we see this stuff going on, of course, like anywhere in the world. But obviously it's different when it's, you know, when there's a possibility that like a loved one has been murdered, like live on TV. So it's, yeah, it's hard. But and I think you guys are doing a good job of this and not getting too carried away by like one side or the other. I think we all, including myself, have to just work so hard to keep our biases like in check and to keep our politics consistent but open also. Sorry, I'm kind of rambling, but
no.
When the protests were going on in Maidan, and my wife had, you know, family down there, and like Ukraine is corrupt and awful in like so many ways, and nobody knows it better than Ukrainians who want to fix it, and they want to have better institutions and courts that work and rule of law and things like that. And you know, so when all that was going on and people were protesting, I remember talking to these people from Socialist Alternative here in Seattle, and they're great. Like we agree on virtually everything. And they were like, "Oh yeah, that's the CIA. Like all of that is just CIA. It's all just, you know, NATO or whatever, the US." And it was absurd because they don't really know, but it was like a reflexive reaction. And it reminded me a lot of like being at BYU as a former Mormon and telling my roommates, for example, that like Joseph Smith had teenage wives, and they would be like, "That's not true," just reflexively, because they were just you know, and religion is that way. People can become conditioned to just accept or reject things without any additional context. And so, yeah, and I think that, you know, you guys are doing a good job, and just, you know, keep it up, but we should always be careful of that. And then obviously right now too, there's people on the other side, you know, encouraging things that could escalate things in a way that's really dangerous. And so yeah, it's just kind of a fucking mess, but I appreciate you having people on who like know what they're talking about, who can give long form, nuanced interviews. And I think that you guys deserve a lot of credit for giving that space, even if, you know, people here or there are going to disagree about points of emphasis or, you know, how one clip is phrased or something about that, like that. You can't get too bogged down in the haters and losers. So anyways, thanks for taking my call, and I'll enjoy the rest.
All right. Well, our heart goes out to you and your family and your wife's family over there.
Yeah.
And you know, you know, I think there are times where, frankly, you know, it's okay to have a predisposition towards things when it's, you know, immediately impacting you. You know, I don't. Not often I raised Michael Dukakis twice in one show, but he was asked during a debate against George H.W. Bush about the capital punishment. If your wife was murdered, I think it was, or something to that effect, would you be for capital punishment? And he sort of very stiffly said, you know, I don't believe in capital punishment. I think something like that. And I think, you know, it's legitimate to say, you know, in that instance, I would want the killer dead. But you know, that's why we have laws, so that we're not, you know, we don't make decisions. Big decisions like that are not made in the heat of the moment for people who have that much of a vested interest in it. And so, you know, I think it's perfectly legitimate for you to have a bias when your family members are in that situation. And I think your perspective, that your awareness that you have that bias, I think is also healthy. So I appreciate, you know, the good for you. And
sending
hang
you
in there.
guys support.
Did he hang up? Yeah, he's got that. That's the way he does it. Just hangs up. Like
Trademark.
That. Yep, trademark.
Those Mormon goodbyes.
Yeah, exactly.
They called an Irish exit and just hanging up without saying goodbye is a Mormon goodbye.
I was going to ask him about the book though, because I saw the picture book with John Smith at the end of his bed, when I think it was the Mayan or Aztec Jesus came to his bed and, you know, said, here's the other Bible, but we didn't get to that. All right, one more call and then we'll take some IMs. Calling from a 210 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Good afternoon, Sam and Emma. This is John from San Antonio.
John from San Antonio. Long time no talk to. You got primary day in Texas. Is that right, John?
Yeah. First, I want to say my heart goes out also to the people of Ukraine. So, So today is the day the two working class champions who are endorsed by Justice Democrats, Jessica Cisneros and Greg Kazar, are favored to win seats in congressional districts that are in San Antonio. So if they win no other metro area, we'll have two Justice Democrats endorsed candidates besides New York City reps AOC and Jamal Bowman. The latest fundraising numbers from the period from January 1st to February 9th show a massive fundraising lead for Cisneros during that period. Cisneros raised $702,000 compared to only $142,000 for longtime incumbent Cuellar. Yeah, Cuellar still had $1.2 million in the bank, while Cisneros had $409,000 on February 10th. Cuellar started his ad campaign on January 10th, but his house and office were raided on January 19th by the FBI concerning possible corruption dealing with Azerbaijan. Cuellar co-chairs the House Azerbaijan caucus. There's been a constant barrage of TV ads from both candidates for the last 6 weeks, but Cuellar has been laying low and avoiding reporters that might question him about the FBI raid. His attack ads on Cisneros are straight out of the Republican playbook, hitting Cisneros on border security, talking about how she wants to get rid of energy jobs in the district. Cisneros has had a good mix of positive ads where she promotes Medicare for all and the Green New Deal, and ads that basically show Cuellar's corporate corruption and is that tied to the raid. So Cisneros won by double-digit numbers in the their first race in 2020.
Won or?
And yeah, in Bexar County.
Oh,
yes,
okay,
she won in Bexar County, right, which encompasses about it was 23% of the district, and now it's gone to 33% of the district.
All right, so just to be clear, John, the Texas redistricting has taken place. The new district, because when you want to solidify, if you're a Republican, you want to solidify Republican districts, what you do is you start to cram in more Democrats into a specific district. So the county that she won by double digits now represents, I guess, maybe 10% more of the overall congressional district. Is that right?
Yes, that's right. So now up from 23 to 33. And so, I mean, and this is also, you know, a little bit higher propensity voters and people in the, you know, in the rural areas.
Let me ask you this.
It's like I said,
let me ask you one more question. Absentee ballots. My understanding is that 30% of Texas absentee ballots have now been declared invalid under the auspices of this new rule, and that's up by 29 percentage points from the last go round. But I would imagine there's more people going out and voting in person maybe than they did, you know, the last round, because the last round we were, if I'm not mistaken, we were in the middle of a, you know, the pandemic was a little bit more scary. I have no idea in Texas. Did people even pay attention to it there? Did people wear masks?
Yeah, well, I mean, when that happened, it was the primary was on Super Tuesday, and so nothing was really shut down at that time. And so, and whenever you're comparing numbers, you always compare it to midterm numbers, because you know you have like the highest the midterm turnout, the highest since 1914 was 50%, and it was I think 67% for presidential. So yeah, it's been the numbers overall have been lower than the early vote in the compared to 2018. In certain counties, though, it is higher. Actually, in the 28th district, it has been higher generally, but I think that's because there's been so much emphasis placed on this race.
Okay, so John, let's cut to the quick. Let's. I mean, we appreciate all the data and going through the weeds. Who's going to win, and then who wins in the general in both those races?
Well, I think Cisneros. I mean, I'm very much hoping, but to be honest with you, I mean, I think it's a three-way coin. It can't be a three-way coin flip, but I mean, it's 33.3% each way between Cisneros winning, Cuellar winning, and actually going to a runoff with Tanya Benavides, who's the third candidate. You know, if she gets 3 or 4%, I mean, that can throw it to a runoff. I think it's on May 24th or 25th, something like that.
Yeesh. And what happens in a runoff? Does that give, you know, I get the feeling like Cuellar, I mean, I guess, I don't know. I have no sense. I mean, you know.
Yeah, I mean,
the real question is, like, if you watched Cuellar, like, is that dude, you know, like not expending his last like $400,000 because he's thinking like, well, I'm going to set up a foundation afterwards that's going to also take care of my legal bills?
No, I mean, I can say definitely, you know, I mean, I don't watch too much cable, but I mean, I would say that, you know, from what I've read also is he's spending a lot more money on like a local ABC, NBC, you know, local ads as opposed to, let's say, MSNBC or CNN ads. That's where Cisneros is going. And so I don't know if that's a good strategy or not, but they're both inundating. I mean, it's just astounding. It's like every time there's a commercial, there's commercials for them. And so anyway, Greg Kazar's path to victory in the 35th district seems much easier as a 29-point lead over the closest competitor, Eddie Rodriguez, in a PTP poll from February 18th and 19th. So the odds are that Cesar will hit 50% +1 to avoid a runoff. And so Cesar and Cisneros give Texas the best chance of gaining 2 leftist seats compared to any other state.
Wow.
The next closest state is North Carolina, where Nida Alam is the favorite in the 6th district. I mean, of course, their maps are still being hashed out. I mean, it's just taken to the Supreme Court. The state legislatures, both in North Carolina and Pennsylvania, saying that, you know, that they have the ultimate authority. And so
John,
that's
let me
be a real interesting rule.
Okay, we'll stay tuned for that. I want you to call back too, so that we can hold you to account for your predictions. But let me just make this one statement. You tell me you agree or disagree that the only upside of this extreme gerrymandering that we're seeing in the context of both Republicans and Democrats, although more so it actually oddly helps in those Republican states, is that it opens up more opportunity for more progressive Democrats because you have districts that consist of more Democratic voters and therefore necessarily more progressive Democrats.
Yeah, I think that actually has to do more with demographics, people moving into the reason why the 28th is the way it is because they wanted to make the 15th, which is one area that's farther south. They want to make that more competitive, and it is more competitive. It's right now it's at 0, and there are just so many people moving into Austin that before they put a sink district, which Lloyd Doggett decided to run in. And so now basically Greg Kazar is running in Doggett's old district. And so, yeah, it's really about demographics, and it's about people moving to larger cities, and those create sink districts. Like before, the city of Austin, which is, far and above the most progressive city in Texas, really only had, I would say, I'm just guessing, it's about 35% of the people represented, maybe 40 were represented by Doggett, and 60% were represented by Republicans before. And now it's going to be about 90%.
Wow. Okay.
And
it's a big recipe for polarization, anyways. But,
yeah. Well, it's another seat. It's another definite seat for Democrats, though. So,
yep. Take it.
But it also makes it harder for them to win crack and pack districts. Like the 21st district
John,
is going to be much easier for. Okay. All right. Thanks a lot, Sam. Okay. Take care. All right.
Sorry. I didn't rush him off, but we was on for 10 minutes.
Yep.
It was all good information.
Oh.
We can just, top line that thing too. Cisneros is going to win. Or a 30% chance.
Yeah, well, don't even say it. I don't want to jinx this.
It's just like I got so distracted by the idea of a three-sided coin.
I know. What would that entail? Like a triangle die.
I don't know that you can do that actually.
No, because
it's automatically becomes a 5-sided coin.
I think it's geometrically impossible. I've been thinking about that too.
Yeah.
That's the last 4 minutes of his phone call. I was like, wait a second. Can't have a 3-sided coin. You can only have a 5-sided coin.
All right. Well, there's 3 separate outcomes.
You'd have to have it rounded somehow.
Maybe it's a rock, paper, scissors,
shoot. Like a ball.
You could get infinitesimally thin points on the side, but you still technically.
You have to play rock, paper, scissors. That's the situation.
That's not a coin, though.
Well, we're at an impasse. There's no coin available.
Cascadia NAFA. Hey, Sam, y'all see the fast-tracked application for EU membership that was just submitted by Ukraine? I'm a few minutes behind. Yes, and apparently it was accepted. It's my understanding that Matt Duss told us. Let's read some more IMs, and then we'll get some clips here. Laura, the British government have no incentive to sanction Russia because the Conservative Party takes so much money in donations and turn a blind eye to London being used for money laundering. Holly, President Zelensky's speech to the EU was heartbreaking. We will never get a leader like this. Between the 101 and the 5, hey guys, you should check out Hugo Soto Martinez, DSA candidate for LA City Council, with supporters such as Tim Heidecker, Chapo Trap House. It's pretty awesome, and it's an important campaign for LA. Check that out. Brett from North Georgia. Hey, folks, hope everyone's having a lovely Tuesday. Thoughts on running as a Republican in small local elections? Just have an R by your name, but enact progressive policies? In favor. Totally. Truck nuts. Didn't what do you call it? Kowalski do that?
Yeah, he tried to do that, and crazy. The party's actually crazy. So, have some fortitude if you try that.
Truck nuts 420. Dear MR crew, how could one let a caring, well-meaning friend know Elon Musk is not suddenly absolved of all of his sins because he's letting Ukraine use his satellite? Though I'm happy he's doing this, it's also possible he's still a pile of steaming garbage.
It's marketing. Yeah. This is like when he got involved with those, what was divers trapped undersea or something.
Oh,
like
yeah,
that.
yeah.
And he's like, we'll save you. And they didn't want to use his submarine, so he called the guy who was orchestrating this rescue a pedophile, or implied that he was a pedophile on Twitter. So no, Elon Musk is a marketer. That's the main thing he is.
Here's the other question: what's he doing with that? What's he doing with that satellite when he's not spying on Russians?
Exactly.
Like, what's he doing? Like, why? Like, how about him not having a satellite?
Should not have a satellite. Yes.
Also, love to Kowalski. I have a major crush on that man. Militant apathy. I can remember 17 years ago when you and Janine were rightly busting on John Boston's crazy ass. Did you ever? Oh, John Bolton. Did you ever think that he would be the smart one in the room? No, I still don't. Still don't think that he was or is. I'll look at that later. What's wrong with Putin being out of power? Nothing. It's just that using.
What's wrong with Saddam being out of power, Sam?
Nothing. I just think that using the Ukrainian people as chum to get Putin out of power, not the right thing to do. California, uber alles. When Trump and Republicans said Hillary wants war with Russia, they were referring to the current conflict. I'd bet there was a general understanding that since 2014, Putin would take military action against Ukraine.
That is ascribing way too much like knowledge to Trump and foresight. He was not referring to using Ukraine as a proxy battle against Russia that Hillary was going to instigate. Like, that's ridiculous.
Yes, I don't even think a month ago people would have assumed. Certainly not Putin didn't, and I don't think Hillary Clinton would have assumed that that this would go this way for Putin. I think this is more opportunist.
Yeah, the Trump got confused live on Laura Ingraham's show and thought that the United States was launching an amphibious attack on Ukraine. So that's just like his sophistication levels aren't what you're ascribing.
What are we coordinating with Turkey? We're going into.
So I bet there was general understanding that since 2014, Putin would take military action against Ukraine. Trump and company knew this and never planned on interfering with sanctions or any act that can be construed as aggression towards Russia. Putin, no doubt, ideally wanted to undertake this operation during a Trump presidency. Hillary wants war actually meant Democrats will stand with Ukraine and NATO. I wonder if COVID affected Russian military readiness by delaying the invasion and costing Trump the White House.
Again, I think it's not as you're thinking of it more intelligently than people in the
also
Trump
my understanding
administration
didn't Trump and I have to check this up, I'm looking at it, but wasn't there increased arms into Ukraine during Trump that even above what Obama was willing to do? I need to double check that, but I don't know.
Wasn't he leveraging support to Ukraine
for an investigation?
That's what he got impeached
for the Biden investigation.
Yeah, I don't think it's
He also pulled back though that what was that? Basically they had there was a mutual spying agreement. I can't remember what it was. Something skies agreement that open skies. They pulled that back just in time. Crab saltine cracker. Did Hillary steal Sam's backdrop? Vaping goldfish. Now that vaccine passports are fading off, do I still have to bring my birth certificate to the bathroom? I don't know what that means. Boomer caused all the problems. Just ask Sam. Listening to you guys talk about international affairs is like listening to Joe Rogan and Aaron Rodgers talk science. You know what you should do? Not listen. Come shower. I mean, he's the foreign policy advisor for Bernie Sanders. Come shower with Crowder. I don't see a lot of last week's shows, so don't know if y'all mentioned it, but Ben Burgess was on Rogan's show, and Joe was talking about how incredibly funny Michael was. I have not seen that.
Yeah, I watched it.
Was it good?
Yeah, I mean, I think I thought Ben did a good job. Ben's a mensch, so he wasn't going to do what I would do and take issue with any time Rogan brought up somebody like Brett Weinstein or Ben Shapiro to take a dump on him. But I thought Ben did a good job, and I think he's also open to the critiques of maybe punches he pulled. So check him out on Twitter.
Yeah,
I have not caught up with that. Hill Dog, we came, we saw, he died. Maniacal laugh. Dayglow Lefty, did you see that officials are worried that Russia might utilize crypto to skirt around sanctions? What are the chances that this crisis in Ukraine is what will finally get the government to finally start putting regulations on these crypto markets.
I had that thought too. I mean, because the crypto is not complying with the sanctions, but I still think like grifters and moneyed interests see this as too much of a wild west opportunity for hiding money. They're not going to regulate it, even though this could be the opportunity, honestly.
On a side note, Sam, your tan makes you look like a new baseball glove.
That is really mean. That is really mean.
Not to worry, though, with the MLB lockout still ongoing, you still have plenty of time to wrap yourself around a baseball, cinch yourself up with some shoestrings, stuff yourself under a couch cushion, so you'll be ready for opening day when it finally happens. Best of luck. Left is bronze. You know, I didn't realize I had gotten so tan. Do I look tan?
Yeah.
Do I look tan?
Yeah, that's a good thing. I mean, at least for me, but I could be better
like
about taking care of my
not
skin.
Exactly the way I.
You're not baseball glove.
I've never really thought of that as a compliment, to be honest.
I don't think that's why it was insulting you, for sure.
What do you mean for sure?
Oh no, it's 100% an insult.
You can't get into the mind of someone like that named Dago. I mean, whatever.
It was actually
follow up.
It was actually me that wrote in, so I know for a fact it was an insult.
The baseball metaphor and everything.
All right, what should we do here in terms of clips? Let's do something that's fun.
Okay.
Can we please?
For the fun half?
Yeah.
Exactly. Oh, well, I do like, I mean, we didn't touch on this yesterday about this isn't a clip, but Sorbo's jacket.
We do have clips of that, actually. Yeah, we have that.
Oh, okay.
So, hey, with the help of, I guess, Rolling Stone, did they do a write-up of the 5 craziest moments at CPAC? You know, it used to be CPAC was sort of an outlier.
What was the early CPACs like?
Like this, except for without the presidential candidate.
Who were the main draws at that point?
Oh gosh,
Limbaugh.
Well, Limbaugh would go, but it was also like, I mean, Rick Santorum. He was a senator.
Well, it's been going for a while.
Yeah. I mean, but it was also, what was the woman? She's sort of like, well, Ann Coulter was always huge there.
Yeah.
And then the woman who did the cheerleading, what was her name? Michelle Malkin, right? She was there.
I think she was there this time too.
Yeah, I'm sure. Breitbart.
No, she was at Nick Fuentes' white supremacist thing.
Breitbart was a big part of it. I mean, this is the amazing thing is that like CPAC is now the mainstream one and the white supremacist one is now the CPAC one. But they're all like, there are no less lunatics there. Here's Candace Owens. She's at CPAC and she is, well, I mean, this is, I guess you could say this is a little retrograde. Ladies, what happened to your sandwich skills?
Now, I share this with you because lately I've been left wondering what our human world might look like if we all drew inspiration from such a notion, a world where even seeing a child signaled a respectable threat and a retreat from would-be predators. To the school boards, to the pharmaceutical companies, to the politicians, and to the bureaucrats who accept money from them to violate our children mentally and sometimes even physically. To, without our express consent, masking them, injecting them, sexualizing them through the education system, to pursuing these ideas of hate, or ideologies of hate. Today, our children are taught to judge one another on the very basis of their skin, with guiding educational principles like critical race theory. And so the question I have for you all today is, why are we allowed for this? Why have we allowed this? When did mothers and fathers agree to co-parent with the United States government?
Whoa. Why is she using a teleprompter, like slurring his words?
I firmly reject this arrangement, and I hope that you guys will as well. You see, in my mind, I believe that the state began assuming control over our households through a very successful campaign that began with radical feminism in the 1970s, which said to women, don't stay at home. Go be like a man. Go to work. Why would you want to stay in the kitchen? Don't make him a sandwich. These ideas that were quietly and subliminally planted into even my mind in the public school system. If you want to be successful, success is not marriage, success is not children, success is climbing the corporate ladder.
Whoa, pause it. First off, where does this woman get off coming up and using a microphone to amplify her voice and speaking in front of a crowd? Is disgusting.
Excuse me, there are sandwiches that need to be made.
Yeah, exactly. What are you doing? People are hungry. Sweetheart, what's going on? We're all starving here. Just play a little bit more. This is fascinating. Like, it doesn't even occur to her. Like, hey,
no, the reason
doing?
that she's in a position to even say this stuff is because she's
How
employed.
old is she?
She's wearing a suit.
How old is she? Yeah, she's wearing a man suit. She's wearing a man suit. She's wearing a business suit.
Hey, Toots, why aren't you wearing a skirt, huh?
First off, how old is she?
She's 32.
32? She's almost outside of childbearing years. What's she doing? What is she doing?
Wearing her dad's suit jacket.
She should be at home right now. Is she married?
Yes.
She's got kids too.
Oh, she does have kids?
Yeah.
Oh, she does?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
Well, but she should be getting busy now.
Where are they? Where are her kids?
She doesn't know. They could be with anybody.
Right now, they could be with anybody. I hope to God she has not left them with the man of the house.
Yeah, we don't want to feminize him.
I know. She's complicit in the feminization of America.
Well, at least she has 2 kids, but why just 2? She's 32.
I know.
It seems to me that she could have started having children almost like 10, 11, 12 years ago, at least. And if my math is correct, she should be on like number 9 or 10.
This is prime earthly heavenly vessel period for a woman. She
This
should be going
seems
to town.
highly inappropriate.
She married the son of a baron, by the way.
That's right. Yeah.
Oh, she did?
Who's in Turning Points UK.
Oh, okay. Now listen, everybody. I feel bad. We should have had a disclaimer on this video.
Yeah.
Because it is to watch a woman using an amplification device, wearing a man's suit, not with her children, of which she only has 2. I don't want people to get the wrong message here.
Oh, she has only 1 kid.
She actually has 1.
She has only 1 kid?
Only 1 kid at 32.
That sounds like she's prioritizing her career. Yeah, I mean, geez, not enough sandwich making and baby making.
All right, well, let it continue. It's I mean, just if you have children out there, please avert their eyes.
Terrible.
Only way to achieve equality. What a wonderful opportunity that represented for the state. Because in mother's absence, the Department of Education began raising our children. And today we are reeling from the aftermath of that custodial transfer. It has never been clearer, especially over these last 2 years in the era of COVID, just how much power we as parents have ceded to the government. And then there's that fashionable brainwash, which we see at home when you're watching the
monitor. The monitor's only down in front.
I know.
That's the problem.
But like, honestly,
her delivery is horrible. She's huffing, like she hasn't caught her breath this entire time.
This is what I say all the time. I'm almost feeling bad for her because she looks like so uncomfortable, but not enough. She's bad at this. She's very untalented.
I'm sorry.
Guys,
I'm sorry.
Check the spelling of propaganda.
Where?
Above her. It says pupil propaganda.
Pupil propaganda.
Wait, where is that?
On the top.
Is that actually like, did we put that up or did she?
No, it's there. It's the theme of the conversation.
It's like Chiron.
I mean, this is a signal. This is a signal. She is, I am worried that she has been kidnapped and forced to do this because what is she doing?
It doesn't even look like doesn't even sound like she's committed to what she's saying.
No. I mean, of course she's not.
This is a hostage video.
This is a hostage
she'd rather
video.
be making sandwiches, and yet here she is forced to work. So this is how she gets her this is like the Morse code, right? How else you're going to get your like communication out there? You need help. She needs help.
That's, I mean, you know, what's clear is the reason why she's having such trouble reading from her teleprompter is because all these deli meats are just circulating in her head. And she's just thinking like different combinations, ham and turkey, salami and turkey, ham and salami. What about tuna fish?
Prosciutto.
Would I put lettuce on there? Would I put cheese? It gets very...
Lots of mayo, though. Definitely. That's what she'd do.
Yeah. So, look, we should...
More mayo, please.
Out of respect for her, we should not play this anymore because she's clearly not in a kitchen.
We don't want to use this for propaganda.
It's disgusting. It's disgusting. All right. So since we're doing a CPAC roundup, can I get a commitment that we're not going to play any more video of women at CPAC based upon what Candace Owens says? That we should not be encouraging this type of radical feminism where they are outside of a kitchen.
Telling us how to structure society?
It's crazy.
Come on, ladies.
Where is the cooking segment from CPAC so that we can see some women doing what they were meant to do? Well, we don't have one. So let's just play Tennessee radio host Todd Starnes. Wasn't Todd Starnes the guy from Fox who got fired or something like that?
I forgot why he got fired, but it was a really weird way.
Yeah, he had a big falling out with Fox. And but he went to CPAC. Oh, now I know why he got fired from Fox. He's got one of those looks for radio.
He was fired, and I don't really understand why Fox Nation wouldn't like this, but Fox News host Todd Starnes out after suggesting Democrats worship pagan god Moloch. So that's the one that is for child sacrifice.
When was that?
That was that's a good question.
Sometimes they have like sacrificial lambs that are on the small side.
Right. Yeah. There's like a sort of like a dip where it's like, instead of Moloch, how about you just say Satan?
Yeah. I mean, Tucker says that stuff on a regular basis.
Exactly.
He's the king.
All right. Well, here's Todd Starnes coming out doing his stand-up bit. This is good stuff, ladies and gentlemen.
The mayor of New York City calls me a cracker, but I prefer the term saltine American. Okay. And what an honor it is to be surrounded by so many gun-toting, Bible-clinging, flag-waving Americans.
This guy looks really
Now, in addition to hosting a national radio show, I am the proud owner of KWAM, the news talk radio station in Memphis, Tennessee. And we are proud to say that our radio station led the fight to stop Fauci's mask mandates in the hometown of Elvis. Now, today, for the next few moments, we are here united.
Let me go back. The first line is there. Oh, yeah.
Wait, what?
The video stepped on the first line, so let me just go back.
Okay.
The pronoun line.
We're burying the lead.
Joke?
We're burying the lead.
Yeah.
Under a single call.
All right, let's forget it. Let's just go on to something else here.
Okay. Well, basically, he says that his preferred pronouns are fried chicken and collard greens.
Oh, good stuff.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
Just so people, weren't hanging on the edge of their seat wondering.
Conference in Orlando, Florida.
I get the sense that he's imbibed quite a bit of fried chicken. Does not strike you as the most of a virile guy.
Good eats in Memphis.
Yep.
Oh, I want some.
Let's just see. Kevin Sorbo showed up and wearing his Glenn Greenwald jacket.
Okay, so this is why I wanted to talk about this. Like, I mean, Ronald Reagan is so funny in so many ways, but the funniest tweet he's ever had is about this. But introduce the Sam, I'll find it.
Well, here's Kevin Sorbo. He, who was he? Tarzan or something?
He was a Hercules, young Hercules.
He's also the second most famous graduate from Minnesota State University, Moorhead, after myself.
Oh, there you go. And he paved the way for Matt Leck.
I've challenged him to a debate on that campus. It stands.
No, I just honestly, like he's got a jacket.
Let's put it up. Yeah.
The liner is
his own tweets.
His own tweets. And
So-
I'm fat. But before we get to Ronald Reagan's, like what possibly, like what's going on in this guy's mind? He's so proud of his tweets. I don't get it. Like, and more people are going to see his tweets on Twitter than on his jacket. What I don't understand, like, what is it he thinks? What is that? Just like these people are.
Well, so he can no longer be censored. I mean, I just feel deep shame about my tweets for the most part. But
Yeah, I want to delete them.
Oh, is that the problem? Has he been shadow banned?
Probably.
If he's so proud about it, why doesn't he wear the tweets on the outside?
I know, right? Well, that's not aesthetically pleasing, probably. But he can open it up like he's some sort of ringmaster. Look beneath.
I mean, this is all like
my
the
cloak.
aesthetic of being canceled, right?
Yeah.
Right. And what did
So
what did
Reagan
Ronald
just, I mean, he tweeted, I guess we don't need to put it up. He just tweeted at Glenn Greenwald, how Glenn Greenwald lines the inside of his mustard polos.
There you go.
His Ray Gun's like crusade against Greenwald's terrible shirt colors is one of my favorite niche parts of Twitter. It's just like always like a lime green undershirt with like a mustard shirt and then a jacket. It's doesn't make a ton of sense.
Let's go to the IMs. Matt's Bong. Let's see. Matt's Bong. At least Hillary isn't spewing racist talking points. She equally has no value for Ukrainian or Afghan lives. Jay Money. Hillary Clinton is right about Ukraine being a bullet that could end Putin's reign, but she forgets what happened to bullets once they're fired. They end up deformed and damaged beyond recognition. The idea that you should constantly do that to a nation of innocent people is abhorrent. Rake Sharpener. About the live stream, can you place an option to up the price and make it a donation for Ukraine? I'll check on that. That's a good idea. I mean, you know, I don't know if technically we have the ability to do that because it's through Eventbrite, but maybe. Do you still do the Ring of Fire radio show? Says Psychotropic Masculator. I do not. No. Have you read my email? The international fan base, thank you for the online ticket option, MR Crew. Also, shout out to the Discord. Justin, after 2 years of uncertainty, I have come across your great free program to access the app, full MP3 file of the show. What I mean is I am somehow successful enough to pay again monthly. You're the only program not to cut off your opinion for money. You value a free press and put it into action to not cut off valued news and opinion commentary. Thank you for the help the last 2 years of financial uncertainty. Yes, just a reminder, if you're going through any type of financial hardship, well, I mean, people are, you know, listening now anyway, so that's something probably to announce on the free show. But nevertheless, tell your friends. Charlie Kirk's punchable face. Hey, Sam, I was wondering if you'd consider inviting John Mearsheimer on the show to discuss Ukraine situation. He predicted this situation half a decade ago. Maybe a good follow-up to the discussion with Matt. We'll look into it. Matty Moron, your guest today has some good analysis of the situation and its nuances, but I just don't know how you hear something like those leaked Victoria Nuland calls post-Maiden and not see how the U.S. leveraged what was a legitimate protest movement and certain forces within it to effect a realignment in Ukraine. Just an important part of the context that lead us to this dangerous situation.
I don't think anyone's denying that, though.
Yeah, like I say, I do think the United States was cheering it on. I have no doubt to the extent that they could enhance it, they did. I think it's naive to assume that countries don't do that. I mean, certainly Russia did that in the context of our election. I think that we do that in the context of other people's election. That
and worse.
That happens.
It's bad, and I think it's condemnable, and it's also not a reason to go invade a country.
Agreed. And I think, you know, Matty Moron is making that point too. Baba Booey says, bucket the Where editor. All right, let's play this clip. This is awesome. Dave Rubin Does he even refer to himself as a classic liberal anymore?
No, he's gone. He says he's
completely given
conservative,
that.
yeah.
Oh, does he say he's conservative? Is that it?
Good question. Yeah.
I'm pretty sure I remember that we covered his
Now, is he down in Florida?
proclamation.
Is he down in Florida now? Is that where he's living?
Yeah.
Is he living in Florida? They moved down to Florida. He and his team no longer paying income tax. Probably replicated his set. I mean, he's definitely moved to Florida, right? Wasn't that where he moved?
Yeah, I mean, that's what I thought he would, but
Well, Sam would know that tan from anywhere.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. We got the same Florida tan. Same.
Yeah, it looks like per his Instagram, he's in Miami. So.
There you go.
Remember the intro video that all those celebrities made for him going to the free state of Florida?
I'm just saying, like, his set looks exact same. And I would take the opportunity to build a new set.
Yeah. Here he is with Dennis Prager. I mean, this is, like
he doesn't get a ton of the budget from Blaze TV. They're not giving him a new
They're not going to give him
They have to build Glenn Beck a new set every other year.
Every 15 minutes.
400 moving cameras.
So here is Dave Rubin staring into his future, right? I mean, wouldn't you look like, don't you think that like Rubin looks at Prager and goes like, oh, this is who I will be in another 30 years.
But Prager can write a book.
That's true.
He's I mean, I know Dave Rubin is published, but
But you know what? But you know how stupid this society is going to be by the time that Rubin is Prager's age,
Yeah.
and the right is going to be literally, playing with its own feces at that point, and Rubin's going to be considered an intellectual.
I know. Matt's trying to erase "Don't burn this book." He's in fact trying to burn "Don't burn this book."
Exactly. So here is Dennis Prager talking about the divisiveness in this country and how we have never seen anything like this. Now, of course, he's not going to ignore our history totally, but this is pretty amazing.
But all right, what do you think? Let's go with that for a little bit. What do you think really is the future of America if this mass migration happens? If basically there'll be
one thing also, as you watch this, you should also know that Prager is all well and good talking to Rubin from a distance, but the idea that Rubin would show up at Prager's house with his husband and dine together is really, I think, makes Prager vomit in his mouth. And so you got to appreciate the fact that he's still willing to, promote each other's shows
for the cause.
Yeah. Okay.
Which mass migration is he talking about? Just to catch up.
Wait,
he said a mass migration.
We're gonna have to see.
Sort of minorities like you in California that will be fighting the good fight but won't have political power. And then we'll have places in red states that may be more aligned with us. What is the united bond of the United States of America if this continues in this direction, which to me it has to actually at this point?
For all intents and purposes, there are two Americas. I think Americans are more divided now than they were during the Civil War. During the Civil War, they were divided on the spectacularly important issue of slavery, but otherwise they were not divided. And now, that's a big deal, obviously, but still, right now, the division is on every issue. We agree essentially on nothing important. And look, there's a fantasy in me.
I just want you to just contemplate this for a moment. It was a spectacularly important issue, slavery, but now we agree on nothing important. I'm trying to think of what's more important than the idea of should I own a human being who, as long as they're of a certain color. Not white.
That might be divisive, right? Just for the black people who were enslaved.
Look, it's spectacularally important.
It's divisive even for the white people who don't care about the black people because they looked at what that was doing to their wages, for instance, right? Slavery. But
it's just
is
so
it divisive
fundamental.
if we went to a civil war over it? Yeah.
But wait, are you suggesting the question as to whether I should be able to own another human being is fundamental? Wait a second, is that more important, Matt? Is that more important than, let's say, some people are using pronouns that I don't usually use?
Yeah, it's somewhere between that and if the entire back catalog of Dr. Seuss books is published.
The Dr. Seuss thing, the pronouns, the idea that people are talking.
That's only two things, which is more than the one thing of slavery.
Well, wait a second. Let me ask you this, and this is open to everybody.
Okay, good. Even me, if I'm not making a sandwich, right?
Is that sandwich?
I'm good. I'm taking Candace Owens a little bit to heart and wondering what the heck is going on here.
Yeah, we need a more functional kitchen.
I'm starving, but but is the question of whether I should be able to own another human being more or less divisive than the question as to whether we should teach about the era when people wanted to own another human being in our schools?
I don't know. I'm not exactly sure.
Well, of course you can't answer that question.
I have to remain neutral, so to not be divisive.
I'm trying to think of the other issues that are really pressing. I mean, honestly, like, what are the other issues that are pressing?
If Josh Hawley's able to use his preferred book publisher,
right?
That's more divisive.
What about shadow banning? Shadow banning, owning another human being. I don't know.
Yeah, both are forms of canceling a human being. I mean, I guess you could argue one is more significant than the other, but
it's true. All right, let's continue to hear this insanity.
All the big cities of the country secede. It's not geographically possible because you couldn't have such a non-contiguous country. But if New York and Los Angeles and Chicago...
You could if you were going back in time and suggesting like maybe what Israel was offering Palestine. But let's not even talk about that. Let's go. I'm sorry. Go. I don't know.
Yep.
And San Francisco and Seattle and Philadelphia, if they all made their own country and left the rest of us, even with all the finance that they would take, all the money, all the banks, it would be paradisical for the rest of us. But it can't happen because of the geographical issue. So what has to happen is, I think, what you just
be paying for
painted. The scenario you painted was of people coalescing in the states they agree with.
And then what makes us united? I mean, does that work? I mean,
we're not united. We're not. I mean, look, I hate saying it. I love this country. We're not united. Tell me an issue that left and right agree on. I think the rest of this podcast could be spent waiting for you to give me an answer.
Yeah, there used to have been a healthy...
I think I found one. I think it would be very hard if everybody was to be honest. Everybody has to be completely honest.
Okay.
Doesn't matter if you're on the left or the right. I think everyone would agree Dave Rubin, not bright.
Yeah.
Right?
That's
honestly,
bipartisan.
Right? I mean, we've heard people from both left and right realize that Rubin is not that smart.
The divisive, or divisive, whatever, rhetoric is so annoying and so played out by conservatives. It's just a way to stifle if you make any complaint about the way society is organized. Wow, I mean, we just can't agree on anything.
It's like we can't agree about everything, but you have stupid opinions about climate change, for instance. So good. They can't agree because fundamentally it's motivated reasoning in support of reactionary power.
I still think that we're underselling the point of Dave Rubin bringing the country together. Do we need to watch more of this? Is there anything else?
No, we should run with it.
The mass migration of people, that's not happening either. I mean, there's some
there's
ideological sorting, but it's not going to lead to a civil war.
People don't have the means to uproot their life in most cases based on these abstract ideological concerns that Rubin's talking about here. It's just a way to brand himself, and then they're pretending that it's happening in mass. They're just media figures posturing.
Let's go to the phones. Calling from a 203 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hey, it's Jason. I'm from northwestern Connecticut.
Jason from northwestern Connecticut. So that would be down in Litchfield County.
Oh, no, way up there, right next to Massachusetts and New York.
Like Kent?
Oh, no, Canaan.
All right, whatever.
Yeah. How's it going? So I was just wondering what you guys' thoughts on the recent Supreme Court ruling on the Georgia redistricting.
Georgia?
Yeah,
or Alabama.
It was on the shadow. No, Alabama.
Yes, Alabama.
Yeah, it was on the shadow docket.
It's atrocious.
Yeah, it's terrifying.
It seems to me that what the states are essentially going to do is just put off making election maps until, what they deem is close to an election, and then draw up whatever map they want.
I mean, yeah, and I think we're just watching the total evisceration of the Voting Rights Act. That's all it is. We're just watching the total evisceration of the Voting Rights Act. First, they started with Section 5. Now they're on to Section 2. It's just going to be totally eliminated. And
absolutely.
This has been almost a 10-year assault now. I mean, by the Supreme Court. John Roberts has been on this beat since the 1980s when he worked for Ronald Reagan in the Civil Rights Division of the Justice Department.
Oh yeah, with the good old what do they call it, the Roberts two-step, where he kind of gives the liberals a little bit of a victory and then guts any bill he wants by essentially making it unenforceable.
And now they don't really have to do that. I mean, right? I mean, because
well, the thing is, they still want to hold this image of the court as being apolitical, right?
Yeah, I guess Roberts does, but I think Roberts does, but I also think that's basically done.
I mean, to you and I and people who actually pay attention, yeah, it's done. But to the middle American, they still see the court as this bastion of justice.
Honestly, I think that's more like other judges and other legal professionals who uphold the myth more than the rest of the country. I mean, I don't have the numbers off the top of my head. Maybe Bradley could just quickly look this up, but I'm pretty sure the Supreme Court's fairly unpopular and is by right,
it's trending down.
It's trending down. And I don't think liberals have a high opinion of it right now, and I don't think conservatives do. And that's because of, at least, I mean, on the right, it's just a perception. But so Axios here, hold on one second. I'm not trying to shoot you down. I'm just, America's disapproval of the Supreme Court has been rising, with 44% now having an unfavorable opinion. Okay.
Republicans still have a decent one, but because it's functioning for them.
I mean, it's trended downward, but yes, Republicans still have a good opinion.
That's because any of the Republican senators or congressmen, anytime they don't want to deal with an issue, they just pass it to the Supreme Court and let them deal with it. So these massively unpopular things, trying to cut Obamacare or the Medicare or the Affordable Care Act, hugely unpopular. So what do? They try and shuffle it to the courts.
Yeah, Jason, you're right. I appreciate the phone call. I mean, this is this has been at one point the Republicans realized that this is going to be the game plan, and they're not going to have to do anything. And then Mitch McConnell really fundamentally understood this, and it is. Was it? The Club for Growth, Grover Norquist, said, we don't care who is president as long as they're Republican and they have the ability to hold a pen. And the extension of that, there wasn't much legislation passed. The only thing they really cared about was tax cuts. But the extension of that was Mitch McConnell putting 250 lifetime federal judges on the bench, 3 Supreme Court justices, and we're just going to see. And, yesterday the court was hearing a case on the ability of the EPA to regulate greenhouse gas emissions, and it's just going to be a relentless onslaught with this. That's and the way that the right has fundamentally understood the value of the Supreme Court in a way that the left has not. And maybe it's because that we've been in some type of status quo from the early 70s through to really this past decade. And maybe the left is just not quite felt broadly the implication of it. I mean, I don't understand, whether it's the right to choose or the right to vote or the right for government to expand Medicaid, a federal government program. was not allowed to expand it under that ACA ruling. Here is Stephen Crowder, since we're talking about the Supreme Court, discussing Ketanji Brown Jackson, who is Joe Biden's nominee for the Supreme Court. It's not going to change anything. She may be slightly to the left of Stephen Breyer, but at the end of the day, this is not going to be. It's not going to change anything, at least for,
but there's
a decade or two.
There's value to me in there being a path for people who choose to go into public defense and to represent Guantanamo Bay prisoners to get rewarded with the Supreme Court appointment.
That's very true. That in the event that we do have Democratic presidents in a position to nominate more nominees in the future, we're going to have a better crop of nominees, potential nominees, in terms of what they do. But like I say, every little bit counts. But here's Stephen Crowder with his deep legal analysis
about her, and he basically tries to connect her to Pizzagate.
Before we move on, we also have the Biden Supreme Court nominee. Have you been following this? He nominated, I don't know how it's going to be, Ketanji Brown Jackson. I've only read it. I've not heard it spoken because the story only makes me mad.
That's close.
To the Supreme Court, which brings us to this week's or days. There are probably quite a few of these this week with the State of the Union. Curious coincidences.
This is not a conspiracy theory. Oh, God.
I mean, it's a conspiracy there. They're kind of leaning into it.
Bill Clinton. Oh my God. It's all Clinton.
Is it Ketanji or Ketaji?
I don't know if
how's it
pronounced, but I think it should.
Okay. I have no idea.
I think so.
Well, Brown Jackson, let's go with that.
Miss Jackson.
And for real.
Kill me. Kill me now. Kill me now.
That was the whitest version of that song ever.
Yeah.
Oh, here we go. Let's do it.
Brown Jackson.
Jackson Brown.
Same judge.
Running on empty.
Right, stop.
That's the blackest
They
version
are
ever.
the least funny people in the world. They're the least funny people in the world. So they start singing like the Outcast song, right? And then they're just playing word association. Oh, Jackson Brown. Then they start singing that. Like, there's no joke here. They're just heard the word Jackson.
Just riffing. They're very distracted because they've got to make sure they don't go too deep into their racism. That's basically what's going on there.
I mean,
how do we do this without going into racism? What string can we pull? Oh, I know. Continue.
Why'd you pick this Supreme Court nominee? Running on empty, running on.
Just love her music.
Like, what do you think about Brown Jackson? She's a bitch girl, and that's enough.
All right.
That's enough.
What?
Now we're down to just one biracial, and I think it's Oates. So,
Rich girl.
wait, that's not Jackson Brown.
Itch girl. Now, that's because, by the way, don't use public toilets. The same judge who sentenced the Pizzagate shooter, in case you have forgotten about this. So another interesting, that's the greatest qualification for Brown Jackson.
That's our biggest case, huh?
Yeah. Do you think this person was just selected on the name? Like, Jackson, that's a black sounding name. What's the middle name? Brown. Done.
That's perfect.
Another interesting point too about this shooting. I don't know about pizza.
It's like, do you think this spasm of racism that I'm experiencing right now is what everybody experienced when
Of course, that is his whole worldview, is that everyone is as racist as me, and I'm sure his audience is pretty closed.
Yeah.
Right. And if not, it's at very least. It is he's trying to give it a license. I mean, look at his shirt. Hate speech isn't real.
Yeah.
Change my mind. As a white guy, I imagine you live in a world where it is not real.
Let's also, like, I mean, all right, let him finish and then we can talk about the actual sentencing.
Pizzagate. The shooter only shot at a closet with a computer inside. That's all he actually shot. And for all the hubbub about Pizzagate, you would think it was this massive scale shooting, but he only shot.
Pause it for 1 second. A lunatic went into a pizza restaurant in Washington, D.C. with a long gun and started firing up, shooting up the place. He was convinced that there was a secret basement where there were child sex slaves. So he shot at a locked closet door. The closet had like the computer server, I guess, because they deliver pizzas. And
yeah, right. Comet Ping Pong was a business there.
And this lunatic went in there because of all people like Crowder and people like Cernovich and all the right-wingers who were pushing this idea that there were secret codes in WikiLeaks where you were talking about serving up child sex slaves, and instead what Podesta and the others in these emails were referring to like getting a pizza. And no big deal, goes into a pizza restaurant, fires, shoots his gun off to bust through the closet door, which he thinks is the door to the basement where all the sex slaves are kept. Not there. What's the big deal? It's not like he shot up this place. And here it is. You ready for the big mystery here at the pizza place? I don't know if anybody's ever been in a pizza place, but one of the things that they don't do is have like all of their office equipment and computers where they're delivering stuff right in front at the front of the thing. But here it is. Here's Detective Crowder.
A closet with a computer inside, which also, why would you need a closet with a computer inside it at a pizza parlor?
Maybe it's a server.
And why was Stelter coming out of it? This has been curious coincidences.
What is the curious coincidence? What's the coincidence? She was a judge for 10 years in Washington, D.C.
That's my point. Yeah.
And
that's where
one
the
of
pizza
those, she was
place
appellate. And the coincidence is,
I think they're trying to do comic ping pong worldwide. That's what the plan is.
Or do you think this is like, how can we promote Pizzagate without promoting Pizzagate?
Yeah.
Right? I mean, that's what this is.
No, this is what we show. We show what happens if you dare to question the pedophile ring and you come and you get a little bit too close. You're going to get sentenced to prison, and then we're going to reward that person who sentences you.
This is him coming on and basically saying Pizzagate could be real.
Yeah. Also, I just want to return to the weird comment he made about Hall & Oates because he said like, "Oh, that's only one of them is biracial," so we kind of got off the theme. But like, first of all, it's weird to I didn't know
why did they come up
breakup of Hall & Oates. But Oates was born in New York City. His mother Anne De Palma was an Italian immigrant originally from Salerno. His father Alex was born to an English father and Gibraltarian mother who claimed Moroccan heritage. So like, weird, just a weird thing to be.
I've never thought about the ethnic makeup of Hall nor Oates, and also Hall & Oates was not relevant to the conversation. He went from
it is, because Hall or Oates or whichever one of them is not as white as Crowder, and so isn't.
But he went from Jackson Brown to Hall & Oates. I don't get it, and don't you dare conflate those two. Jackson Brown's a legend. I mean, that's a whole different thing.
He wants to make his audience aware of two things. One, that she's black and he's not in a position to say anything. He's got to be very careful about how he weaponizes race.
Have to do weird pop culture references.
He has to be very careful because his YouTube channel is hanging in the balance. He wants to be able to monetize that. And then also, it's just a coincidence. What's the coincidence?
Yeah.
She's a judge. He's using this as a way of, again, promoting Pizzagate without actually making it,
saying, I believe it.
I believe
it. Skirting around the YouTube censorship, or not censorship, I shouldn't say, in his mind, like skirting around getting demonetization or getting another strike, which would permanently take him off. So.
All right, folks, we're not going to have more time for phone calls. Apologize for that. Sorry. Bing, bing. That is the sound that says, sorry.
Bing, bong.
No more phone calls. But we will do some IMs. Should we do this Matt Walsh or the...
I mean, the Matt Walsh thing is going to piss me off, but the Pat Robertson thing is batshit.
Let's do Pat. Let's do Pat Robertson. It's so long. since we've had Pat Robertson.
He's like retired or something.
No, he
honestly thought
came
he was
out
dead.
of retirement for this segment, Sam. This is
Are
a
you serious?
special Pat Robertson.
Wait a second. Wait.
Yes.
Wait. Let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
As we put his image up before we start to play the video. Did Pat Robertson put the image up? Did Pat Robertson come out of retirement, or was he resurrected?
Or is someone wearing his skin as a suit?
Listen. I'm getting up there in age, so I'm one to talk. But I'm going to make all of you make a promise to me right now.
Yeah.
If I look like this, tell me just to do an audio. If I need to come back, to comment on something, just say do it audio and we'll play it.
Okay.
We'll play it. We'll take a picture of you from back in the day and we'll run the audio. Is he wearing a turtleneck or does he have his neck wrapped in gauze?
Gauze, yeah. He's half mummified.
Listen. This guy's such an a-hole. I still remember the days when he was talking about, like 9/11 was a function of the gays and whatnot. I think it was him. Was he say that?
Yeah. No.
It was him and Falwell, I think we're saying that.
Aired on ABC Family. I remember watching it on occasion.
All right. So here it is. Pat Robertson has come back. He used to be able to smile like this. Now he can't.
It's like Michael Jordan on the Wizards.
Exactly. Oh my God. All right, here he is. He's going to explain the Russian-Ukraine conflict on the 700 Club for everybody.
I think you can say, well, Putin's out of his mind. Yes, maybe so. But at the same time, he's being compelled by God. He went into the Ukraine, but that wasn't his goal. His goal was to move against Israel ultimately. And God is getting ready to do something amazing.
Wait. Did we put that fade in? Where'd that fade come from?
Right Wing Watch did the fade.
Well, so he's saying that that he's moving. He's going to go to Ukraine and then to Israel.
Well, they're all connected, right? They're all connected. Let's hear what he has to say more, because I think
why would there be a computer in the closet of Ukraine? Is that not a portal to Israel and the Comet Pizza? I don't know. Let's
fulfilled. And what Putin is doing by moving as he is to set up Ukraine as a staging ground for one of the armies, and then across is Erdogan, Turkey, and you've got between them that little Dardanelles area, and it's going to happen. So I just say that is what's coming up. Is Putin crazy? Is he mad? Well, perhaps. But God says, I'm going to put hooks in your jaws and I'm going to draw you into this battle, whether you like it or not. And he's being compelled, after the move into the Ukraine, he's being compelled to move again to get a land bridge and then across the Dardanelles with Turkey, and watch what's going to happen next. You read your Bible because it's coming to pass.
Ooh. Wow.
Now,
don't you understand? This is like, so if Putin is out of his mind, it's because he's being compelled by God in order to accelerate the end times.
So he's got to go into Ukraine so he gets a land bridge through Turkey to invade Israel.
Right. And that will bring about the
no, he's going to do this
Armageddon, right?
He's going to do this over the cover of night, right? I mean, he's not going to.
Yeah. Is this going well? Is the staging ground thing? Is that all set up for the invasion of Israel?
I wish he went further into this. And there's Elon Musk is going to build a hyperloop from Ukraine to Lebanon, and they're going to all go through the hyperloop as God ordered to invade Israel. and then I will be resurrected. I'm dead now. I'm actually dead, waiting for the resurrection from Putin to then come back, and then I'll be able to be on the show 5 days a week.
So Pat, what happens at the end times?
Well, I get reanimated. I get this gauze off my neck, and also with your donations, who hosts that show?
All the non-believers burn. I just want everyone to be clear.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah,
yes. I'm sorry, I forgot.
That's why Israel's subjugation of Palestine is righteous.
2/3.
Yeah.
2/3 of the Jews go to hellfire.
Mm-hmm.
1/3 sits on the right-hand side of God.
Sam Seder can be on the third.
Sam Seder is going to be on the third because he has special dispensation because of his eczema. And the hellfire is horrible for the eczema.
Yeah, it makes you sweat.
Despite the fact that the Sunset Lake CBD lotion is very good for his eczema. Yeah, that's it. There you go.
So if Putin comes off as crazy, it's just because people thought that when God spoke to his disciples, they were crazy too, right? But you have to do what God tells you.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course. Wow, that is. I got to be impressed by they still let that guy come out. All right, let's do some IMs, then we're going to wrap things up. I-5. Putin seems like a mostly rational actor, but there's an element of vanity to his personality. Shirtless, horseback riding, etc. Perhaps he's acting from a sense of wounded pride. Can't we somehow tell him he's a big man and get him to calm down?
Does he have kids?
I don't know.
I'm just wondering what he might be compensating for.
The Polish woman seemed to say that he had kids in the Netherlands, but I don't know.
At least 2. He has 2 daughters, it seems. I don't know. His masculine. Has anyone seen Power of the Dog? There's some performative masculinity that Putin engages in. I'm just saying.
Turkish Martha Stewart. When Ben Burgess was on Rogan, I still can't believe that there was a part where they were talking about Michael Brooks, and Rogan knew who Michael was and was very complimentary of him. Bizarre. Is that true? I haven't seen it.
Yeah, there was the famous Michael Roberts thing, and Rogan appears to know who Michael was and think he was a really smart guy.
Michael Roberts?
Well, remember when he called him Michael Roberts? He called Michael Brooks Michael Roberts.
Oh, okay.
But now Ben brought up Michael a couple times, and Rogan said, "Yeah, he's just a smart guy, like sad, something like that."
He said something about his impressions being funny, and
should have had him on.
Yeah.
Josh from Chicago. Hey, props to Nomiki for taking down Aaron Mate. Who the fuck is Aaron Mate? And why are people on the dumb left parroting Russia propaganda because they think the revolution will come faster? I agree with the points made yesterday about the double standard, but let's get real here, that this is an act of imperialism done by a lunatic oligarch. I feel like I'm taking crazy pills. I miss Michael Brooks every day, but I miss him particularly this week. He'd have no truck for this. I mean, the idea, we've said this over and over again. Of course this is imperialism. Of course it is. You can believe that expansion of NATO was somewhat destabilizing, but you listen to what Putin himself said the other day. This is about the problem with the expansion of NATO was not, I think, for Putin, a question of is Russia going to be invaded? It was, this is going to inhibit us returning to a greater Russia. Sam's only fan. Hello, Sam and MR crew. I've noticed in the mainstream media, they keep saying this Ukrainian war is the worst in Europe since WW2, forgetting willfully or not that the Yugoslav wars had one of the worst ethnic cleansing atrocities post-World War II in Europe, claiming the lives of around 150,000 lives and displacing around 4 million refugees. I know it. It's crazy. I hope the Ukraine war won't reach that stage, but I'm really curious if you think this kind of overlooking by the media is related to the selective empathy towards some reporters that have shown toward white Christian refugees versus others. In other words, most of those killed in Yugoslav wars were Muslim, so apparently they don't actually count in European history. But, you know, and I'm going to try and get this guest on for Monday, right? I don't know if we booked her? We're working. Okay. You'll recall in 2014, there was not this type of response to Ukraine and the war there. And there's some speculation that really just sort of like Ukrainians have been sort of, that social construct of whiteness has been adopted. And so, you know,
well, we covered that yesterday.
Yeah, it's conceivable that that's a function of it, like that time. But yes, it's weird that Yugoslavia is being sort of memory hold. It's just weird. J-Men Raps. Hey guys, just wanted to shout out Matt for pushing back on the Vaush fans, obsessed with condemning bad Russia takes, going after you guys last week. God bless their hearts. Anyway, do you agree with Chomsky that Europe is more racist than America? This refugee situation is a pretty good example. I mean, it's conceivable. There's been some pretty serious racist acts in Europe over the past 100 years.
Yeah, like it's a hard question to answer, but like there are pluses and minuses on both sides. America, just by the nature of being more diverse than a lot of European countries, has learned to deal with it as a people, but it also has the history of trying to enforce, you know, segregation, things like that, which lives on. So it's complicated, but I don't think that like the simplified version we have as like Americans, particularly like anti-racist Americans, where America's so bad and everybody else is just welcoming, isn't quite the case.
Right. Jonathan Armstead, Mr. Goodreads Book Club has a new poll up asking what book from last month folks are most interested in reading. Also, if anyone wants to join, I have a standing discussion question that asked, if you were to fill in for Sam for a week, what 5 books and authors would you interview? Uchi Wally already chimed in with some that fit in a critical race theory themed re-education camp, but I'd love if Jeff from Georgia could chime in too. Good stuff. Check it out. The majority, MR, not Mr. MR Goodreads Book Club.
Mr. Goodreads.
Mr. Goodreads.
Mr. Goodreads is kind of catchy though.
It exists. Oh, it's a translucent 3-sided dice. All right, I'm not gonna.
Yeah.
Well, I'm gonna take a look at it. I have to.
You gonna buy it?
Well, I want to see this. Picture's not coming up now.
Perhaps we could do that later, though.
Yeah, that might not be the best, seeing as how no one can see it except for me. Hard Apple Cedar. Zelensky being a former comedian running a country being invaded. How do you feel you would do in such a situation, Sam? I mean, you know, now at least they got a template.
Yeah.
Pet friend. Sammy baby, best option for a 3-sided coin is a cube with 2 heads. All right, I'm not even going to do that. Forget that. Really cool. Remember when Mitch McConnell waved a rifle over his head at CPAC? Oh, yeah, that's right. Jesus. Bear at home too. Sam, when are you doing a full account of your Disney experience? I'm super interested in when you started wishing you took the Disney cruise instead. You know, honestly, maybe. Mark Monkey, 2 more of these. I hope Sorbo's tweet jacket is the one where he accidentally advocates for single-payer health care. Shockman, surrogate birth adventurism in Ukraine. You guys have already covered it. You guys may have already covered it. Weird. I've never even heard of that. That's bizarre. And the final IM of the day. Crowder wanted to engage, this is from T-Shirt Gate, Crowder wanted to engage in misogyny on top of his racism. He switched around the Hall & Oates lyric of "You're a rich girl" in order to call her a B word.
Right, I know, but how he got there.
Yeah, it's completely
nonsensical because Jackson Browne and Hall & Oates are not the same band, but that's, or whatever.
Bradley, Matt, Emma, great job. We'll be back tomorrow. Look over the State of the Union and talk more about things like politics. Bye.
It might take all the strength I got to get to where I want, but I know somehow I'm gonna get there. I wasn't looking when I just got caught between the truth